Now, what's funny about this is my Twitter account, it's labeled as the top misinformation super spreader. But they have a meme in here where it's an NPC with a mask who's full of pokies, a bunch of needles in both arms, and it says, "Govern me harder, daddy." Well, we actually have this meme in the tabloid Fake World News. So I'm sure this is a coincidence. But this particular meme, and this is a tabloid. I mean, I would buy this See, this is why we're doing Fake World News. I would buy this mainstream media agitprop government rag for that dank meme, just so I could cut it out and put it on my fridge. All right, let's see. Phones are open now. 833-311-1984. I have a couple of voicemails. Let me start with these first.
What's up, IPS? Hey, man. So I was at the store the other day, and there was a guy standing in line ahead of me waiting to check out, and the the virus came up, the Rona, and he was saying how much of a scam it was. Like, oh, there's not a sickness and whatnot. And I tend to agree with him. I said, I agree with you. It's a big, big money grab, big scam. I didn't really go into like too much detail on my thoughts about it, but it made the people around us very uncomfortable. And as he was leaving, and we were both leaving or whatnot, I just was thinking, like, talking about your opinion on the pandemic and on the virus or the lack of a sickness. It is just like almost as bad as talking about 9/11, and it is that controversial to bring up the fact that
Oh, that's interesting. Because I was talking about how this is a replacement for 9/11, and this goes further back. The number 19, and this is all Illuminati code. I'm not making this up, I'm not putting it together, but if you notice, it's just a pattern here. So you got Pearl Harbor was actually called Operation AI. AI is 1 9, first letter, ninth letter. The PNAC, where you had Dick Cheney and others talking about they needed to have some sort of a Pearl Harbor event to catalyze change. The Pearl Harbor event was 9/11, which had 19 hijackers. So you had 19 hijackers, 9/11, like Operation AI, similar event in terms of its scope and what it allowed them to accomplish. Then 19 years later, following C-19, the comet, we have COVID-19, and then everything that follows that is, of course, now post-Great Reset, World Economic Forum 666, and their whole project now is post-reset governance of the world with something they've launched which they call Gaia, the Global AI Action Alliance. Well, Global AI Action Alliance, Global 19, is that number again. Very common reoccurring theme. And then, of course, if you look up Gaia, Gaia is just another way of worshiping the earth. It's an earth god, often represented as a goddess. But I think it's more appropriate to say God. I think the sky is the goddess, the earth is the god. But whatever it is, they have this World Economic Forum brings out this Gaia idea. I'm like, okay. So anyway, just bringing up how 9/11 has been replaced by everything since 3/11. Not a coincidence at all. If you look at these events, that you often see 9/11 and 3/11 in all the predictive programming. These numbers are always connected. And the reverses. Like I said, the new tower that replaced the twin towers from 9/11 going down was erected 13 years later on 11/3. It's like passing a torch. Okay, let me continue with this message here. I'm going to scoot back a few seconds so you can hear him again, just to reiterate that he's describing how talking about this pandemic critically is like talking about 9/11 critically.
controversial to bring up the fact that there's not a sickness, and there that it's a scam. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. I don't go out and necessarily talk about what's going on unless it's like brought up to me. But it did feel like someone screamed in the store that 9/11 was an inside job. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. Anyway, hope you're having a good day, man. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right. Now, I mean, it wasn't only the virus and the pandemic narrative that was the replacement for 9/11.
Upside down and zoom in on the people walking round. The people walking round upside down. You got a balloon, I got a balloon. Boats reappear with Zoom.
All right, here we are, 7/2/2022, another Infinite Plane Saturnday. Thank you all for joining. Text message alerts have blasted out. Newsletters are being opened as we speak. This is Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. Where is the curve? Because nobody's found it. Okay, so this is more or less part one for Infinite Plane Saturday. I'm pretty sure we're going to have to do a follow-up later. There's so much to go over, and I don't know if I'm going to have time to go through all of the voicemails, all of the links, and people are going to want to comment on some things later. And I want to point out too, I'm doing a bit of a, you could say, review on Stranger Things. We'll go over some of the things that I saw. I'm not going to offer any significant spoiler alerts, as though it weren't entirely predictable. But you know what I mean. We're not doing a film review so much as propaganda breakdown and analysis, but it does require us to review the propaganda. So, but you know, to say we give spoiler alerts kind of understates it. We give spoiler alerts about reality itself, about the Major League World Stage psyops. So with that, let's go ahead and start. I have a long list of things. So again, let me go ahead and visit the chat. Make sure everyone's arrived. Is the raft assembled? We've been inundated with bots, and I think we've done a good job of clearing them out. God Scott says, stop being horrible to Greta. It's not its fault. Oh, no, I love Greta. Really, I mean, the worst thing she ever did, I think the only thing she did that I criticize is she killed Rick Astley. Well, she didn't kill him. She murdered the Rick roll. If you didn't see that, Greta Thunberg murdered the Rick roll in front of a group of non-socially distanced super spreaders at an event that was not environmentally sustainable. And nor is her hair, if you want to get down to it. You know, I'm in favor of locking up climate change protesters, not only for our own good and possibly theirs, because many of them lie in the freeways, they glue themselves to airplanes and now expensive paintings, but I think it's environmentally sound to lock them up. It's greener. What are they doing driving to these protests? What are they doing making signage out of these materials? They should be sitting in their cells and reducing their carbon footprints. They're all just hypocrites. And I want to help them do the right thing. So I will snitch on climate change protesters. And I will support the prosecution of anybody doing any kind of eco-fascism, any kind of, like this here. So here you have a couple of climate change fascists, doomsday alarmists, in front of a beautiful painting of Van Gogh. And it says, just stop oil. It's like, what? Okay, just use watercolor from now on? So anyway, just stop oil. My point is, they're gluing themselves to these frames. And these are the people who believe that the Earth is going to end in 1,028 days. And I brought this up before. 1,028 days is a very significant number when you look at some of the other references we could infer in this, because they're saying we're all going to die in 1,028 days. And here we have October 28th, 1028, happens to be the 301st day of the year. And this is significant, and shout out to Jurassic Liars for pointing this out, because that happens to be Bill Gates' birthday and the date that Elvis Presley got himself the polio shot on TV. So, on Bill Gates' first birthday, Elvis Presley got the shot, making Bill Gates 666 days old when that happened. Just another interesting Mark of the Beast tie-in. We're joined by Thirst, Osher 6, Vinny Barbarino 29, Deborah Dodson. It says blackface skin masks and skin suits. You know, we talk about deep fakes, and that is one of the topics we're going to get into today. There's a lot of deep fakes all over the 1/6 event. A lot of people pretending to be just regular dudes running around with cameras, getting caught up in a sting. No. The deep fakery is on all levels, and it doesn't have any sort of barriers. I mean, we have no idea who we're dealing with on the world stage clown show. Space is Water says your shows and your work are amazing, Tim. Can't get enough. I appreciate it. And they wouldn't be such without the think tank. That's really what we're doing here. We have our platform, our open air think tank. Globe Skeptic Historian says dog/God. There is also a Catholic saint that may have a dog head. Yes, there's a lot of connection between God and dog, and this is actually something that's pointed out in the Book of the Law that the Crowleyite OTO types worship. And what they say is it references the dog star Sirius. And as of tomorrow, the 3rd, we will be in the dog days of summer. These are the days where the star Sirius is behind the sun, and in their occult philosophy, it magnifies the power. It's the hotter days, and we'll get into the significance of it. But 7/3 is also the birthday of Tom Cruise. And let's see, there's something else. Oh yeah, the 5th. On the 5th, we've got CERN being cranked up a few notches. So you're going to see a few heads explode. Your Mandela affected friends. Things are going to scramble. You know what would be great is if they cranked CERN up so high that all the Mandela affected artifacts go back to normal. Wouldn't that be great? And then what? They would probably have to lock up all the affectees. Okay, so let me go through my list of things again. We're going through this eco-fascist breakdown. These what they're doing is they're being agitated because it's a midterm, elections are coming, but they're losing touch with reality, with the very ideas of science and approaching these things as though we're talking about actual environmentalism. But no, the real climate change we're dealing with now is their attempt to change the climate politically. Okay, let me bring this up. Another major development. Ketanji Brown Jackson marked a milestone in American representation on Thursday when she was sworn in as the first black woman in history to sit on the nation's highest court, officially taking on the title of justice. So I watched this Masonic swearing in ceremony, and it it is noteworthy for a couple of reasons. So if you followed this story, when she was the nominee, she was being attacked by the right as you would expect. But the attacks against her were called sexist, racist, among other things, and she got in anyway. Alongside this, there was a great deal of talk about the Crown Act, which is about non-discrimination against natural hair. And so this ties in because at the same time frame, Will Smith slaps Chris Rock over the comments about his wife's hair. And Jada had made a comment regarding her hair in an interesting kind of coincidence. If you look at the movie Nutty Professor, Jada Smith is in the movie, and her boyfriend attacks a Chris Rock-like comedian in that movie. Well, in that movie, Jada wore a wig that she found to be very uncomfortable, and it was not her natural hair. And she talked about it later, saying, our hair is our crown. So her point was, wearing that wig was a big affront. She felt like it was ill-dignified, it didn't fit. And my point being, this is all part of the same psyop. The hair, the Crown Act, Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, in front of everybody, of course, over the hair. This reoccurring reference to the crown. Now, here's the tie in. Will Smith was playing the role of King Richard, and he even compared his slapping of Chris Rock to the character, King Richard, whose job it was to defend his daughter Venus, or his daughters, but uh, through the Green Court to become queens on the Green Court to win these trophies. And throughout the movie, they were faced with sexism and racism. So you had a parallel story in the Green Court, the tennis court, as you did in the Supreme Court. And not only did these stories have parallels, but Venus Williams was watching the slap and actually had her hand on an exposed breast in a weird, again, another occult tie into the goddess Venus, this is another level to the interpretation. There's a reason why Jada was wearing the jade green dress. Another tie into Venus. The color associated with Venus is green, the tennis court green. So again, green court, the crown, lots of stuff in here, but that's my starting point. So she gets sworn in. Again, Crown Act, we all know the tie-ins with the whole Corona thing. But this is just another example of a real life event and having a parallel. Because just as Will Smith had to defend Jada, the leftist media was calling on people to defend the new Supreme Court justice against the attacks from the right. Okay, so let's continue. So she was sworn in as the 116th Justice of the Supreme Court. Now that's an interesting point there. The 116th. So if you've been following this narrative with the Kraken and the release of this Kraken thing, well, on 116, that's when the portal opens in Stranger Things, which is all about the release of the Demogorgon. In the Batman movie, Gotham is flooded on 11/6. So 116 again, another reference to a flood or a kraken. And I have much more to build on this because of the new Stranger Things. So you have the kraken and the flood connection here already. And if you didn't know, right now the GOP is running under the slogan of Flood the Polls 2022. So there's a lot of flood happening. And this also ties in, I believe, to why you have the stuff going on with the hold on a second here. Kraken flood connection. Oh yeah, that's right. Let me bring up this other picture. The global warming stuff, all the alarmism. It's about the flood waters coming, the flood. But I got a really strong connection I want to get to right away because this ties into Stranger Things. So in Stranger Things, at the very opening, you have this conversation between the main character and the character 11, where he's talking about cracks in a dam. And you can see on the screen, I actually do closed captioning so I can screen cap it. And he's flexing a pencil. And he's talking about what's about to happen when this has a lot of predictive programming, as you'll see. But as an illustration of society being pushed or the world being pushed to a breaking point, he bends a pencil while he's talking to the main character here and snaps it. But he's describing a dam breaking and a crack in a dam. And cracks in a dam is very significant, again, because in Stranger Things, you have a few other elements. You have the Watergate, you have the release of the Demogorgon, and you have this Kraken-esque like symbolism throughout, which I'll go into in more detail. And one other thing. So the portal where the Kraken gets released takes place at an underground base, and the location of the underground base, the coordinates in the movie are given as 116. So again, reoccurring symbolism and numerology in the news media, in the entertainment, it's all parallel and it all reiterates the same theme. And the theme is about this dam which is about to break. And we will be getting more into that as we go. I have so many other things to get into. Again, if you look at the screen, this is also very significant. Again, I won't call this a spoiler, but so here you have a Stranger Things season 4 snapshot from where you have this chapel-like building, and you have a cross on the ground, where the ground is being split open, a big crack opening up. This is the Kraken being released, and if you see it, it's just filled with Kraken imagery, tentacles, etc. And it's all symbolic, obviously. But here, it looks like a scene out of Dawn Day or Dawn Day 2. the Kanye West slash Future events. Future is the producer of that album, goes by the name Pluto, and the whole thing is about Pluto returns, Hades returns. This is about a crack and the underworld opening, hell opening up onto the earth. So in other words, the Kraken is represented in Stranger Things as the split between the worlds, which ties in perfectly with Hades' return, because Hades, or Pluto's returning, is directly connected to the Kraken, as Hades is the one who releases it. He opens the gate beneath the water and releases it. And this is another reason why I think it's significant. There's a lot of Watergate correlation between, one, in Stranger Things, Watergate is a huge part of it, but two, presently, Watergate is being brought up and it's being compared to 1/6. Watergate 1973. They're comparing it to the J6 committee. And interestingly enough, the J6 thing revolves around his character Sidney Powell, the Kraken. And again, 1/6, and I mentioned this before on Netflix, Inside Job, a 9/11 reference in the title, a cartoon called Inside Job, Season 1, Episode 6. A Kraken takes down Bezos in his yacht. So again, the Kraken being released is the symbol here. And the chapel, very significant. It ties in not only to Dawn Day 2, but to Westworld, the burning of Westworld. And the Rust movie set, where Alec Baldwin shot Helena Hutchins and Joel Souza, well, that too had a similar chapel. Same exact meaning. He shoots someone with Trump's birthday. He shoots Helena Hutchins from Ukraine. He's from Hunt for Red October. She's born in the place where that movie slash book takes place. Tom Clancy wrote 9/11, so he probably wrote what's coming next to some degree. Hunt for Red October is about a nuclear submarine, and again, the death of the West. And Putin has been saying with his Satan II rocket that the West is done. So the Dawn Day 2 event, the symbolism is the Pluto return. It shows the flood, the blackouts, the cracking of the house, which represents, I think, America. So we're looking at this symbolic thing across, again, it's represented in the movies, it's represented in these highly staged ritualistic events, and we're seeing it in politics. So again, to reiterate, the new justice, number 116, the flood of the polls, and then check this out too. Ketanji Brown Jackson, words you can extrapolate from her name. Kraken awakens. Crown, corona, abortion, robotics, satanic. Now, these aren't complete anagrams, but it's also just basic, interesting. What do you call this? You do see a lot of what I would call word magic and sigils in the mainstream. So, just another connection there worth looking at. So again, 116th Justice. We're talking about Watergate tying into 1/6, but also the Stranger Things portal opening on 11/6. Batman floods Gotham, or rather, the Riddler floods Gotham. And here's another thing. So the Riddler's radicals online blow up a dam. So the dam breaks and floods the polls. Two things about this. One, the Riddler is like Q now, always asking questions, and the Riddler's back, and he actually posted about some new witness. Now they say she's in danger, which we'll get to, but they've equated the Riddler and Q. That's already, I think, been established. But two, the Roe v. Wade thing was preceded by what? A leak. So this is just another example of symbolism here, where it's a leak referring to water. And what happens before a dam breaks, presumably? I imagined you would have a leak. So that's kind of what I'm thinking here, is the leak and the references to water and Watergate are all connected, and there's a bit more here too. Someone in Discord had posted something today. So much in the clown, I mean, this is just clown world, but so much to go through, but we're going to cover a lot of things that I think should start some people thinking about what they want to call about later. Okay, this is from Lux Invictus in Discord. Anyone else notice all these words relate to water? Row equals row as in a boat. Wade equals wade as in through water. Overturned equals ship capsized. Seems like it tracks with the Kraken water rift symbolism. Overturned, I hadn't thought about that, so nice catch there. And I agree with all of this. So this is just kind of reiterating here this dam breaking. And to give you an idea of what a catalyst I think this is going to be, consider the symbol of the burning bat all over the Batman movies. The bat as the phoenix, the symbol of the phoenix, burn down, build back better. It's the symbol of their revolution. But they've used the symbol of the bat and the burning bat well, since 2012, I would say, since Dark Knight Rises. My point is, the bat as phoenix was what they really used in 2020. It was the bat soup born plague that was the catalyst for burning down the system. So, right before this thing started, before the leak, there was a guy named Win Bruce, which is a very Batman-y name. I mean, Bruce Wayne, Win Bruce, and Win Bruce set himself on fire on Earth Day in front of the Supreme Court. Now, nobody cares about the environment that much. It's obviously a hoax, but my point is, he did this for Earth Day, or on Earth Day, presumably for it, because he had tweeted about it before. But I'm thinking here, the symbolism here is Win Bruce, a burning bat, another bat phoenix in front of the Supreme Court. So I'm thinking that whatever's happening at the Supreme Court is going to be the catalyst for the next major thing. And this is apparently the major thing. If you're in chat, just say hello. If you want a wrench, I will hand those out presently here. Let us continue. Yeah, again, this is regarding the newest Q drop. So Q dropped something, and now they're saying return of mysterious conspiracy theorists could threaten the life of J6 witness Cassidy Hutchinson. So Cassidy Hutchinson is the witness. She's the one who saw Trump. I guess she saw him grab the steering wheel. Go gadget arm. But she was mentioned by name by the latest Q drop. And this is a pretty big screw up, I think, on the part of the people behind Q. Jim Watkins and Ron Watkins clearly have a lot to gain from this whole Q story. And it actually looks like the Q thing was hijacked, or rather, Jim Watkins, I think, not Ron or Jim, one of the two. They were trying to pretend to be Q, possibly to score some political points. But whatever it is, people looked into it, and apparently it's not the original poster. So, not sure what's going to happen though, because speaking of the J6 thing, Jim Watkins was there and he testified, and so presumably he admitted he wasn't Q. So it's going to raise some questions. Okay, let's go back and look at Stranger Things. Just a couple more things about it. I don't want to offer too many spoilers. Matthew Modine is the mad scientist, the character who creates these, what do you call them? These psionic children. The main character, Elle, has these mental powers, telepathic, telekinetic, etc. But the main character is the guy who plays Joker in the Kubrick film, Full Metal Jacket. And this is interesting for lots of reasons. Born 322, for those of you interested in that kind of stuff, 322 may be significant because you don't know for sure when these characters are born. These are all world stage actors, and anybody connected to Kubrick is highly sus. So Matthew Modine is Joker. He's the main character, one of the main characters in Stranger Things. So looking at him in this context, well, one, in the Full Metal Jacket Kubrick thing, there are connections. So, for example, Kubrick tends to, in most of his movies actually, and I think this is probably one of the things that they've missed, the people who looked into Kubrick's moon landing connections, is they missed that he's connected to a lot of things. So you might notice a lot of Apollo 11 predictive programming, or rather references to Apollo 11 in Full Metal Jacket. And you can point this out and you can say, yeah, he's clearly, is he telling us? Which a lot of people think. He felt bad about it. No, that's not exactly it. We're looking at something deeper. But you also find more pointing at 9/11 than you did pointing at Apollo 11. And so anyway, this is a common thing with Kubrick, is he references all these different events. And in this particular movie, in Full Metal Jacket, you can find references to 9/11 and a couple other things, but also JFK assassination is inculcated into this movie. So JFK is actually represented by the character Joker. And that's my point here. And we'll probably go into detail on this thing later, but let me just point out a couple things. So yeah, one, Joker represents JFK, and there's an article called Full Metal Jacket and the JFK Assassination Hoax. This is from chartword.com. But I'm showing you one clip here where you can see Joker with the bullseye on the side of his head. Again, Kennedy connection. And behind him, you will see what looks to be the Twin Towers burning, or a very 9/11-esque image in the back. So kind of a combination there. And this may tie in the future here, I think, to Donald Trump's hat with the 45 conspicuously placed on the side. I think there's some Kubrick in that as well, some foreshadowing. But again, I'm just pointing out that this actor is the one in Stranger Things. And so the idea that Stranger Things would be connected to Q, the Kraken, and the big event to come, yeah, it makes perfect sense. We're looking at predictive programming, concurrent programming, and the metascripters, who are the people behind this. Well, some of the big stories apparently have been written by Kubrick, Tom Clancy, and many others we could name. I could name a bunch of people I consider to be insiders on the big metascript. Like, for example, let's look at this one. James Cameron, look, Terminator 2. And James Cameron said that Skynet's already real, the AI is already here, and it's going to kill us off without blowing everything up. But here's a still shot from Terminator 2. And I bring this up because T2, very significant. Like Top Gun 2 coming out right now, Pluto's return announced at Dawn Day 2. There's a pattern here with the twos. And it has to do with this second coming of Pluto, second coming of Hades, and the big, what you would consider to be the effect of the Hades return astrologically. It's associated with the upending of empires, the big crack opening up, hell opening up. So here you have an image from Terminator 2 with a sea turtle, and here you have the people in the playground burning. Now the significance here, T2, the Terminator goes back in time to stop the Savior, who is who? John Connor, JC, Jesus Christ. A lot of 9/11 predictive programming in Terminator 2 as well. But in this case, the sun dies at sunset. Set is another name for the Prince of Darkness. Terminator is Set, the Terminator line when the sun sets. So you're looking at the sun setting on our age, on this present astrological age. Maybe the sun setting on the west. So you have your daily sunset, then you have your bigger, and it's all just symbolic, obviously. But Terminator 2 would symbolically connect to Satan 2. That's going to put an end to the west. And here it's inferred it's going to be in the northwest. And I found a lot of fascinating, significant symbolism here, connecting the turtle or the sea turtle, Seattle, and what looks to be a scheduled purge on the west coast. And what I mean is, well, Purge, again, if you didn't know, the guy who did the publicity for the Purge series was recruited by the Trump team, by Kushner, for their 2020 Keep America Great campaign. So that tells you something. The Purge is about basically the government lets lawlessness take over certain times of the year, lets people just kill each other off. But I thought this was interesting that in 2019, about the time that the Joker was running amok, Joaquin Phoenix, before the movie Joker came out, and he's protesting against climate change and all this stuff. Around that time, you had the fires, the PG&E fires. And here's what really stood out to me. I was noticing a lot of the symbolism with Seattle and something targeting the Space Needle. But a lot of it suggested some kind of a nuke. And this Hunt for Red October thing, and a lot of it symbolized, a lot of the stuff pointed at the sea turtle thing. And so I started thinking, could a sea turtle symbolize a submarine? A nuke born by a submarine? And then what would happen if that were to go down? Because much of the predictive programming suggests a period of darkness, a blackout, and this purge scenario. So interestingly enough, you can take PG&E and Seattle, and what I had found here, just kind of noticing how they were telling the story, it seemed like there's some kind of sea turtle Seattle / purge spell being cast here. And you can take sea turtle and move the UR over to PG&E. And I was showing some headlines where there was this clear storyline being told where, yeah, it looks like Seattle is being kind of set up for a period of darkness following some kind of a EMP, perhaps. And I think this also explains a few other things, like lately the 1,800 employees from Amazon being relocated because of a quote crime wave. I don't think it's a crime wave that they're preparing for. I think it's another kind of wave. And this is all foreshadowed in the Seattle Kraken hockey team trailer. It's been foreshadowed in so many ways. Anyway, I don't mean to be too ominous. By the way, human meat plant-based burger, dare to taste it. We're there, Soylent Green, and the vegans are ready to eat human meat. Let me go through your comments here. Ivar says, I'm Q guys, sorry this LARP got out of hand. Joined by 33 Wrens, Echo Charlie. Echo Charlie says Qers are worse than Star Wars fans. Yeah, at this point, they're worse than Star Wars fans. I don't know what else. I think fanatics is the term here. Fanboys for JFK. I mean, you want to see a horror show. Forget the human meat burgers. Look at Kennedy Sunday like tomorrow. Go on Twitter, look at the hashtag Kennedy Sunday. You will see thousands of QAnoners fawning over the baby pictures of JFK Jr. and what a good dad JFK was. It never stops. And this has replaced Jesus for them. Not an exaggeration. I'm being 100% serious. Continue. Portal Complex says Eddie rocks. Oh, you're talking about Stranger Things? Yes, Stranger Things is a great show, and if you liked Nightmare on Elm Street, if you liked Hellraiser, Goonies, and I guess there's a couple others thrown in the mix there. They kind of just grab from all these different movies and they take what works. But the main thing I watch these for is the concurrent programming, where they hardwire these stories in to the news that's coming out, which shouldn't be possible because they're filming these things a year in advance, 2 years in advance. So when season 4, episode 1 comes out, it has a warning on the screen. Warning, this might trigger you about next week's school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, or the one that just happened. And I'm like, wait, I didn't know there was a shooting. I'm just trying to Netflix and chill. And now I got to watch a bunch of dead kids on the screen, and I can't enjoy it now because it really happened. I like how they have to put, oh, warning, dead kids. They got to give you a warning on the film when there's going to be dead kids, but only if there's been a shooting recently. Otherwise, it's just good, wholesome family entertainment. Netflix as usual. Joined by T-Dog135. Oh, Sam. Penguinati. Yeah, I'll be handing out wrenches. Gubin. Thirst. Yeah, look, I'm going to hand out wrenches. If anybody's getting unfairly whacked, I'll handle it. And speaking of whacked, there's that whacked coin. What is that worth? The coin that McAfee put out? Because McAfee's corpse is still in a freezer somewhere. Like maybe somebody ought to pay for a funeral. You see that? John McAfee's corpse is still in a freezer in Spain. And his family. This is supposedly what they're saying. I mean, John McAfee found dead in a prison cell. That was last year, but yeah, apparently he's still in a morgue a year after his legal case lodged by his family. Okay, here we go. Unbelievable, though. And this guy has faked stuff before to get out of things. So, I didn't think he was dead. I thought it was some hoax. Supposedly, though, he had a dead man's switch, and that was my interest in this. This guy had a dead man's switch. So the instant he died, the deep state was going to fall. The family of software pioneer John McAfee has stepped up their demand for answers after his mysterious death. His corpse remains unclaimed. Like, how does that even happen? His widow said it's difficult to put into words what life has been this past year. He lost. This is, again, I'm sort of wondering, what does this mean? Does this lead you to think he's dead? Or that it's a death fakery and they borrowed someone else's corpse and they're too cheap to cremate it? It's not like they don't have money. We're talking about John McAfee. Oh, by the way, again, CERN kicks on 7.5. They're going to turn it up all the way, and hopefully they can fix all the Mandela effects. So I go to this forum called QAnon Casualties, and I just read to see how people are responding to this thing. And listen to this. Any other Q family members obsessing over CERN? Now, CERN, by the way, is likely because if you've looked at their opening ceremonies, it's usually a bunch of men with goat horns and women dressed as witches, and they prance like they're doing some weird witchcrafty stuff. And if you look into it, Cernunnos is the horned god that apparently they're invoking, the Lord of Wild Things, a Celtic deity. And I have some books on witchcraft that that talk about this character and his significance, and it's kind of the same basic energy they're invoking that you see with any of their other main rituals. The same god, different facet, different face. But my point is, this would explain the 666 on their logo. And one other thing about CERN that I find interesting is this focus on portals, or this in the movies that has a kind of a CERN tie-in, and I don't think it's a coincidence. A lot of the stuff on Netflix right now has to do with portals. Has to do with, in fact, that's what Stranger Things is about, the Watergate gates opening. So that has me thinking. We had the Astral World event with all the portal symbolism, and then months later, 6 months later, you had the portal above the White House that Roger Stone was praying about, and he closed it with prayer, thankfully. He called it a satanic portal. But what is with this portal thing? And I think I figured it out because I found an old tweet from Elon Musk where he talked about the Hyperloop being like going into a portal and coming out in a different continent. So I think I know where they're going with this. And if you haven't heard me talk about this before, basically I think they may be simulating space travel with Hyperloop, and the explanation for the lack of um, floating around like you're in space is, oh, we're going through a portal. It's just going to be really fast. And they've already made up stories like they say, oh, we got space manifolds, arches of chaos. We can just travel through space on a celestial autobahn. Just got to chart our course, and we'll let the gravity from other planets and other bodies move us along at a high rate of speed. Okay, Osam says Lupe Fiasco has a song called Seattle on his new album. I'll check it out. Maxwell Cooper says the Dead Man Switch episode of IPR brought a lot of confused new viewers to the show. Yeah, like 1,500 people showed up. But nothing happened. Okay, so I'm at a just anybody who's listening live. I have 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 YouTube channels concurrent, and I can only log into one of them. And that's because most of these have already been shut down, but I access the keys. They have 2 strikes or 1 strike. So if you don't have a wrench, there's quite literally nothing I can do except after hours. I can go through these chats. So make sure you say hi, and I'll be handing out wrenches after. Okay, so back to this. Any other Q family members obsessing over CERN? My former pastor is obsessed over CERN. He thinks the return of Trump and Jesus is going to coincide with the startup of the Hadron Collider, and the whole thing will be destroyed to the scientists trying to play God. Okay, so Trump and Jesus are going to come back, and CERN's going to try to shut it down, is what they're suggesting. So, back to Satan 2, Pluto 2, Terminator 2, Top Gun 2. Trump's going to have his T2 moment, Trump 2, if you're not aware of this. On July 4th, Trump is going to announce that he's going to run for a second term. So that's interesting timing here. So will Trump come back with Jesus? Well, not likely. Will he come back with JFK Jr.? Probably. I mean, that's what they're thinking. More likely JFK Jr., who is the second or third coming. Depends on how you look at it. The way they look at it, JFK was the second coming, JFK Jr. would be the third. Now that might sound batshit, but let me go ahead and show you how this is actually right out of the script of that went into a music video called Coma White, a script written by Marilyn Manson. Yeah, Marilyn Manson might be Q, now that I'm thinking about it. So listen to this. There's a music video for a song called Coma White. And in the video, Marilyn Manson portrays Kennedy, and he dies. Rose McGowan is Jacqueline Kennedy. All this stuff is super, super significant. In the video, though, you actually have a cross with JFK's face on it, like on a photo, on a painting, or it's like a photograph of JFK on a cross. But listen to this, because this is why I'm starting to wonder. Maybe Q is Marilyn Manson. The video for Coma White was inspired by a film that Marilyn had written entitled Hollywood. Manson said that the unproduced script featured the idea that there were two previous Christs. There was Jesus and there was JFK. So the whole idea for Hollywood is that they're waiting for their third and final savior. And that's what he's going to be, President White. So that would be JFK Jr., obviously. So JFK Jr. is President White, the third Jesus who's coming to save us, according to this Marilyn Manson video. Now, here's where it gets interesting to me, and this is why I think this is probably true, or not. I mean, I don't know if it's true. It fits. The Coma White video garnered considerable controversy. The MTV premiere of the video was delayed. Why? Oh, because of the death of JFK Jr. Manson issued a statement about the video through his publicist, and he said, "This is an attempt to nip any controversy in the bud." He said, "Little did I know," and this is so funny, like how would you know, "that the accidental death of JFK Jr. would follow." Really. It was in no way a mockery. Got it. It was in no way a mockery, just a big coincidence that it seems to be the case that the satanic rocker Marilyn Manson happens to have the inside scoop on what the QAnoners are going crazy about. Okay, let us move on. Portal Complex says, what happened to the kill switch? Exactly. Oh, look who joined the Black Eye Club. Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler is now an initiate. So, that's what the Queen's been up to. You know, I did a few compare. I was looking at not a chart, but just a whole bunch of memes, and I was like, look at all the people at the Black Eye, and you look at everyone who's connected. The only person who's conspicuously missing one is the Queen. So, I have to just assume that she's the one doing the slugging. Okay, Bexar County officials say 13 people were found inside, but the conditions weren't specified. Another one of these stories. I predicted this, if you recall. I said midterm, borders, guns, abortion, and gay rights, as usual, just the usual political footballs. Suddenly, people are going to care about these things when they don't care the rest of the year. So suddenly, everybody cares about the border. Suddenly, they care about the. And now, what do you have? You have trucks. They pull up these trucks and they say, "Oh, there's dead immigrants inside." Then you have people outside crying, and that's it. You don't see anything. Very psyopy. So here you have the crisis truck. We'll address the press shortly. You have microphones from every press agency just outside of this truck, supposedly full of what? Rotting corpses? Give me a break. They probably use the same trucks that they use for the auxiliary morgues outside of the hospitals. All such a big ruse. It's a magic show. You know, during the lockdowns, many hospitals had trucks outside, and they said it's because our hospital morgues are full, and the hospital's full. It's so full that bodies are falling out the windows. So we have to pull out these trucks. We've got to dig mass graves in all the parks. Never happened. Where are the mass graves in Central Park? All those trucks that they put out there, these big freezer trucks, it's all theater. The tents were all empty. The nurses were busy, I think, on the pharmaceuticals and twerking and doing pole dancing on the IV poles. And then you had the empty trucks. And they said, oh no, these are full of bodies. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. That's an absurd. There's a few problems with this whole proposition. But the main thing was, I thought this has got to be a scam. But they're doing it so the public has to hear the morgues. They have to see it. It's a constant reminder. And sure enough, in our local papers, you'd have articles like, if you're in the college district, it'd be like you hear the hum of the freezers because of all the anti-vaxxers are keeping the pandemic going. So it's just a way to subtly remind us people are dying, hospitals are overworked. No, the workers weren't overworked. They were overtwerked. If you looked at any of the empty hospital videos, you know what I'm talking about. So the Reason why they were putting him outside was theatrical, and I concluded that before. I figured that was the case, but I had a job back in April doing some decedent transport, and one of the things they said was, "Hey, lucky for you, they reopened the morgue beneath the hospital, so you won't have to use the trucks outside." And I'm like, "Why is that?" And I was told, "Well, they closed them for the pandemic." I'm like, "Wait, they closed the morgues beneath the hospital for the pandemic?" And they said, "Yes, to prevent all the in and out traffic," or some stupid excuse like that. So, in other words, they weren't overflowing. They were choosing to handle regular deaths outside so the public could see it. We're talking about crisis corpses. And that's what you have here. If they're real bodies, they're crisis corpses. I'm assuming here it's just a bunch of rubber dolls. But what they should have done, what they should do, is they need to pay the family of any corpse that was used on TV for their psyop. Give them whatever the going rate is for a gag actor. If you're in the Government Actors Guild and you want to call in and let me know what you get paid per gig, I'd be curious. What are these dead people owed? I've been doing a deep dive into the 1/6 event because I've realized that the false flag narrative is obfuscating the truth, and we'll talk about that. I also have some great content regarding deep fakes and body skin suits. I mean, we have no idea what kind of people we're dealing with if you're looking at the world stage. The idea that the weekend is Beaver in a bodysuit, yeah, that's not even an extraordinary claim at this point. Thinks he's a penguin 101 says the refrigerator trucks didn't even have refrigerator systems as far as I could tell. Yeah, I don't think they did either. Okay, so let's get back to this. Stranger Things, a couple other points about it. It has to do with a huge crack opening up, a big rift. There's foreshadowing about a dam breaking. And at the end of it, you have what looks to be. So the town of Hawkins is the one that's being targeted. And if they don't stop this thing, if they don't stop the evil, the town's going to crack and break up. Now, if you remember, I brought up the Demogorgon. The Demogorgon is a creature being created by the Russians. They're breeding these things. So you have these big vats with these Demogorgons, which are very Kraken-like creatures in Russia. And in the second part of this final installment of season 4, the main character is wearing a red, white, and blue jacket. And I think his girlfriend's wearing a Hulk Hogan. Very interesting just symbolism here because he fights the Kraken. So you got this America guy fighting the Kraken with a Conan the Barbarian sword. And the symbolism here, of course, is the Kraken released 11/6 ties into Release the Flood, 11/6 in the Batman movie. And then we have this Supreme Court thing, all the flood symbolism. And of course, she's Justice number 116. So it's overlapping symbolism. Release of the Kraken. Well, at the end of the movie, the city cracks up, as I showed you in the pictures earlier. So you have these big cracks opening up, hell opens up or whatever, and from the back, people leaving the city, it looks like mushroom clouds. And what's more interesting is people come outside looking up at the sky because they're seeing debris falling or ashes. And to me, this looks like fallout, like nuclear fallout. So the town of Hawkins, I think, might symbolize Seattle. And I think this series is also hinting at some major calamity involving this build up, this Kraken. And I do think it's waterborne, sea turtle, Hunt for Red October, nuclear submarine, Satan 2. I think that's the direction they're going. All signs point to Seattle gets the nuke. Fake nuke. Because they can only do so much in reality. So you'll see the graphics, you'll see the special effects, you'll be blacked out. You'll be shamed for calling it fake. For all the people that died, all the rubber dolls, they're going to have whatever they're going to do. I mean, I don't think they're going to do an actual mass casualty event, but they're going to simulate the heck out of it. And we're not going to be in any position to call it fake because internet will be off for a few days. Found an interesting quote here. I have no tears left. Relatives learn loved ones died in Texas migrant tragedy. Okay, no more tears left. That doesn't happen. But I thought it was interesting that it said I have no tears. That's the truthiest thing I've ever heard from anybody, any of these actors in the media. And that is the case. I didn't see a damn tear. TMZ, Nashville, poisoned. Poison canceled a show. Sources connected to Brett tell TMZ he had a bad reaction to medicine related to COVID, and the medicine triggered a reaction as a result of the diabetes. So, what is the significance here? I say fake until proven real. I'd like someone to explain the meaning of the bandana on his head. Is there any corona symbolism here? I remember in 2020, the band Poison and their green logo was popping up in a lot of symbolism. The Poison green. Billie Eilish was all decked out in this Poison green. So this green thing and the poison was actually a meme that was being kind of forced in the early days of the pandemic. But ultimately, I think it ties into the green revolution. Okay, let us continue. Again, I want to go through the 1/6 event in detail because here's the problem. You have a lot of people out there saying it was a false flag. Oh yeah, there were some guys there, some live streamers. You just regular dudes you can trust, dudes with beards and MAGA hats, and they said, hey, that's a Fed over there. And that's a Fed. Okay, so here's the problem with this proposition. You're assuming that the people pointing out the Feds aren't Feds, and that it's not a closed movie set. And as long as you believe them, then you have this false perception that it was a false flag instigated by Feds. And the more I've looked into this thing, the more I find out that the people calling out the Feds are very questionable. So, in all likelihood, we're looking at a hoax with a false flag theory being misapplied. So, no, somebody else did it. The Feds did it. The left did it. Antifa did it. No, Antifa and Proud Boys are paid by the same people. That's pretty clear here. And now that we can see all the predictive and concurrent programming that connects this Kraken to 1/6, you can see how this is part of the big story. So if anybody was there, they were part of a movie. This is a big movie set, and this is the subject of a long phone call I had with Lynn the other night, which I'll be premiering later today. I just have to finish cropping it. We had a 4 hour, and I have to cut it into 2 sections, 2 hours each. But Lynn had suggested we all watch The Day of the Locust because it was about a cast of thousands. So I'm going to check this out likely today. I have to rent it. Day of the Locust. I may even watch it in the Discord server. So if you're not in the Discord server, go to infiniteplanesociety.com, sign up, or just go to Infinite Plane Media. I'll put a link in the chat. It's $2 right now just to get into the Discord server. And we do watch things, we do live reviews. Going through some comments. Oh, by the way, speaking of nuclear accidents, or events, do you remember the other 3/11? Okay, 3/11, 2020. Ground Zero, Seattle, pandemic. The other 3/11 was 3/11, 2011. Fukushima. Nobody remembers that one. It's a good thing we didn't have another event on 9/11, because then, one event trumps the other. But yes. And here, let me show you something else too. This is also interesting. 911 days after 9/11/01. So these are just connections that show you how these aren't coincidental date relationships. So 911 days between the Madrid bombings and September the 11th. The Madrid bombings, of course, were a 3/11. So 911 days between 9/11/2001 and 2004. Yeah, these are very, very significant. 6/11, 11/6, as most of you have already seen. But I think we are one of the best channels at actually reverse engineering their propaganda and determining what it means. Here's a sci-fi called Rubicon. It says, take a deep breath, it's your last. Everything you see about I Can't Breathe is part of this agenda. I Can't Breathe is an anagram for a better China. Not an inside joke. This is legit media magic or witchcraft, whatever you want to call it. They get people chanting I Can't Breathe. A better China is part of this whole program. If you think about, look at Derek Chauvin representing Western chauvinism. And the Proud Boys actually have shirts that say Western chauvinism, and Chauvin is highlighted. I'm like, that's interesting. Chauvinist is highlighted. So Derek Chauvin represents this Western chauvinism, and it's all about the West that's going to take the fall. He's kneeling on George Floyd, who says, I can't breathe. He's kneeling on what that represents. BLM is the vanguard of the Marxist revolution here, but it's really just the front of the bigger world revolution. So the better China, a big communist revolution. So you have the communist revolutionaries versus Western chauvinists, ritualized in that symbolic death where he said, I can't breathe. And the messaging there was simply that the world can't breathe under the oppression of Western chauvinism. And the earth itself, the atmosphere, cannot sustain this political and economic system. So the earth can't breathe. In Moonfall, in that movie, there is a girl who can't breathe. And one of the adults says, let me take off my mask and give it to you. Sacrifices his life so she can breathe when the moon falls. It's so funny. But, these little messages in the movie are all connected to the big story. So here's a sci-fi called Rubicon. Take a deep breath. It's your last. Following a catastrophe on Earth, the planet's covered in a toxic fog. The crew in the space station must decide whether to risk their lives to get home and search for survivors or to stay in the station's algae symbiosis system. So they're up there watching the Earth die. This is exactly what Captain Kirk was crying about. So William Shatner was up in space and he saw the Earth from above and he saw that we're covered in toxic fog and he got emotional. And William Shatner says he can't stop crying. William Shatner could not stop crying following his flight because of his concern for climate change. That flight, that trip was very, very interesting, the whole story around it. His jokes with Anderson Cooper about, quote, inseminating space, and then the correlation between William Shatner, Rocket Man, and William Shatner, Knife Man, as the face of Halloween's Michael Myers, which was out last year at the same time. Because, yeah, Michael Myers wears a William Shatner mask. And Rocket Man, Knife Man, has a strong connection if you look into the great rite of witchcraft and the symbolism of the dagger and how it represents the same thing as the obelisk or the rocket or even the gun, as in Top Gun. Repeating symbolism. So the Knife Man, the Rocket Man, represents the high priest in these occult rituals. That's all it represents. And so that's why you had William Shatner going into space on October the 13th at the same time of this Halloween Kills, because you're talking about the sacrifice, the harvest. We talked about that last fall, but we'll probably revisit that here soon. Echo Charlie says, 1-6, where's the missing footage? Oh yeah, the CCTV, it's at the same place where you can find the footage from where Frank James shot the subway car and he pulled the trigger 33 times. Angst G says, the people pointing out the feds are feds. Good example of fake fake. Exactly. Exactly. Fake and fake fake. So, doors on Mars, fake fake. Mars, fake. Now, Mars is, of course, real, but is it what they say? Well, is it the thing that they show us from their lunar rovers? I would say no. That's Devon Island. That's probably Arizona. It's probably CGI. But it hasn't been established as real using, quote, evidence and, stuff like that, facts. It's just hearsay. Your Martian lunar rover is hearsay. It's visual hearsay. It's the visual, I used to call it see-say. In fact, it's another one of these words I had to coin to make sense of the world. See-say. Like hearsay. I hear it, so I say it. It's the same thing, visual equivalent. So, whenever you see artifacts or anything at all, really, on these different planets, what they're really doing is they're showing you fake fake because it assumes the existence of the fake. So if you're looking at black holes, you're assuming the existence of space as presented. If you're debating the existence of aliens, you're assuming space is real. So aliens are fake fake. Space is fake. So you have feds, and then you have people calling out the feds, but if the whole thing is fake, then the people calling it out are, as you said, what do we call them? Again, anybody who got unfairly banned with the wrench, don't worry about it. I will pull you out of the dungeon and apply wrenches soon. In fact, we're only going to be here for a few more minutes. I wanted to do a quick rundown of my notes, but we're going to have open phones late, and I'm going to do a premiere of what we had earlier. So we're going to have phones late into the night. We had a record the other night. We almost reached 200 on our live stream. So definitely come back later. If you haven't signed up for the text alerts, you can sign up below. I have a picture here of Dr. Oz kissing one of the Hollywood stars. This guy has $100 million plus in assets. Anyway, this is interesting. He's running for office. The only reason he came across my radar is Trump was endorsing him. The name Oz stands out because Oz is the, well, Wizard of Oz, and Seattle is the Emerald City. And this guy was born on 6/11, which has a lot of interesting connections to everything else we've talked about. But the name Oz, or the word Oz, has some very specific significance to uh, the Crowleyan cult, or the OTO, the cult that runs the world. Liber Oz is where they get, do what thou wilt, shall become the whole of the law. So I just find it very curious. Been looking at a lot of Masonic symbolism in plain sight, but also Thelemic. The other occult secret societies, they have their, you can see the same kind of messaging, but like for example, Pete Davidson. Is it a coincidence that he has a 418 on his arm, which is a number relating to the great work, and the great reset is the great work, and then it has to do with burning down the old system. That he has a 93 on his chest, which is the main number of this cult, which actually the cult is called Thelema, and 93 is the numerical equivalent. So these cult members say or write the number 93 on everything. So he's got 93 on his heart next to a Mars attacks Martian. Well, 93 is a reference to this cult which venerates Mars as their god, the age of Mars. So that connects in multiple ways, and then you tie on to it that Pete Davidson's dad died at 33 as a Burning Man in one of the Twin Towers, which were 33 when they were burned down. So he's hardwired into this occult system. Listen to this. Green Bay Packers. With Aaron Rodgers rumored to be dating an alleged witch while throwing dimes on a human reptile, the Packers quarterback stares at another season in a quaint fashion. So yeah, apparently you have this common theme. Tom Brady's wife was a witch. He had an altar. Aaron Rodgers dating a witch. What is with this? There's something about this. I think it's very interesting. The least interesting thing about football is the game itself, in my opinion. The most interesting thing about it is the use of this ritual. They use the athletics as a cover, but they use the tradition of it as a focal point for so much propaganda, so much messaging, so much actual ritual. I actually think they're channeling the louche of the viewers, and this is literally Baal worship, as in Baal, the god of the earth, Baal. But I could be wrong. I highly doubt it, though. There's a reason why they have their Super Bowl on Candlemas, on Imbolc. And when you dig into the symbolism of Janet Jackson having her breast exposed against the green field with the solar symbol over her breast, yes, that's all scripted ritual. Okay, a couple more things. Again, Stranger Things at the very beginning, symbolism. He says cracks in a dam. He gives a big speech about a dam breaking. And this is very significant to everything we've been talking about. And if you listen to my breakdown of the first part of season 4, I was already talking about the Watergate, the Demogorgon, the releasing of the dam and the flood. So I've already been talking about the release of the Kraken being written into this plot, this season 4's plot line. But now they're outright specifically saying that the dam is about to break. Cracks in the dam before the earth cracks in Hawkins, which might be a reference to Seattle. And I'm thinking maybe Seattle Seahawks. I don't know. Is that too weak of a connection considering the significance of Seattle Kraken? Maybe not. Now, there's a part where the characters are talking about this monster they're fighting and how it has 4 kills, it opened 4 gates, and he's 1 kill away. 1 kill away from opening up the gates of hell. Again, who opens the gates of hell? Hades. Hades releases the Kraken. And this all ties in again to the Watergate and the idea that, I mean, a big part of this here, a big part of the story that makes it all make sense here is that the the beast is not a space invader. He's coming from the water, the beast from the sea, which is very consistent with everything we're seeing here as well. So in this scene, these characters are saying 4 gates, 4 kills. He's just 1 kill away. And one of them says, "Oh, Jesus Christ, Jesus Christ." They repeat that. And there's another part in the movie where they say that again. And again, these are key phrases. Why would they say that? It ties in to later in the film, right above the opening to the gateway, which here you can see the underground base. And the underground base, as was pointed out by someone in my Discord server, Spirit Jordan, he said, "Did you notice when they mentioned the coordinates, it was 116 degrees?" So here they are entering a base, and this actually looks like a recent photo of a doorway on Mars. So the Stranger Things show proceeds, of course, this is the base where the portal is. So after they mention another death is needed to open the gate, and they say the name Jesus Christ several times, a death happens above the portal. You have a guy shot multiple times, 4 times, in a very Christ-like way, one blow after another, and then, of course, he falls in a Christ-like pose, and this is like a major part of the film for a minute. So several times they mention one more death would be needed to open the gates of hell. They mention the name Jesus Christ several times, and then after that, what happens? The gates open. Now again, the actor who plays this guy is a guy who played Joker in Full Metal Jacket, which is a tie-in to JFK. Fascinating tie-in. So let me bring this up. Someone had mentioned, Echo Charlie had mentioned missing footage for 1/6. Check this out. This is from Eddie Bouncer 196. He says, "I've been watching 200 live CCTV cameras in Ukraine for 4 months now. Not as much as a soldier, never mind a tank. All cameras are real time and geo-verified. No smoking buildings, no fires. People are just walking and driving around as normal, including the eastern cities." So if you had footage, CCTV footage from inside 1/6, you would see makeup, you would see the cameraman, you would see acting coaches, water bottles, lanyards. Steven Spielberg may have been there. Wasn't he at the Boston bombing directing that thing? You know, some think, and I kind of agree, that maybe Kubrick lived long enough to direct 9/11. And that's why at the first Oscars, Tom Cruise gave him such a massive shout out. Infinite Plane Radio.
Oh, wow. I'm here. Am
Yeah,
I
you're
live?
here. You've arrived. How you doing today? Infinite Plane
Good.
Saturday.
How are you?
Everything's
So,
great.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Are you a
Go
first-time
ahead.
caller?
Yeah, I'm first time caller. I've probably only been subscribed for a couple weeks. I'm subscribed to Jurassic Liars, and he did an announcement that he was going to be live on this show, and I watched a bit of that stream. So I
Okay, cool.
realized you had call-in, so I decided to give a call-in. So, yeah, I don't really know what to talk about
Well,
because it's
what
like
about
I can't have,
JL26? So
yeah.
JL26 has been talking about this kind of a prophecy of a beast from the sea, and he's correlated it with Elvis. And so the way I understand it, it seems like Elvis is the sales pitch for the beast and the worship of the beast, for the masses. That it's a better sale than anything. It's like basically it's like Satan's
How
Jesus.
Satan is Jesus?
You know, like Satan, like God has Jesus as a rep, Satan has Elvis. So that's why he says Antichrist. He's like the uh, that's kind of what JL has pointed out here is the role of Elvis. Do you think that's accurate, considering what you've
Yeah,
seen?
I'd say it's pretty accurate because I think there's this saying like evil comes through the guise of innocence type of thing. Everyone's just kind of falling for this beauty because it's so tangible, it's so believable. I mean,
Plus music,
think about
music.
anime, music, anime, uh, TV
Anime
shows.
is very,
It's
yeah. Let's get on that for a minute because anime is super innocent looking, big eyes. The features are very childish, and then the first time I went over to one of these 4chan sites, I'm like, wow, you got adults sexualizing and perverting these really childish type of images. I find that to be very disturbing, but
Oh,
also
yeah.
the graphic violence, the tentacles. Yeah.
I think that's just like a mutation in the minds of the Japanese people that occurred after the two bombs have fallen. Like it's a degeneration of, you know, their DNA in a way. And, you know, to express that inner pain, they've kind of like amalgamated pain and innocence into like a medium that's just really horrifying. I mean, I was in the anime growing up. You know, it started with Pokemon, Digimon, Beyblade, Yu-Gi-Oh, and you know, it did lead into the darker stuff, and I did get out of it because it's so satanic. But if you really look at it and study it, like the colors, it's very bright. It almost burns into your mind. So it's kind of subliminal in that fashion.
I haven't heard this, but it doesn't surprise me because like it's in plain sight. Like you think it's just entertainment. No, it's programming. When it comes to card games, why would they be innocent? And if you read the theory behind tarot cards, like the operating principle behind it is that you're somehow, yeah, that images matter and that you're connecting with these images, that they are like you bond with them is what you're supposed to do. This is a color magic. If you look about like any sort of magical school, they emphasize colors, symbols, numbers, sounds, but to put them all together on a card like that, you would consider it to be a sigil. And so it's like, why is this any
Right.
different just because it's marketed to kids? Are they not tapping into the same basic body of sets of symbols? Regular playing cards are based on the weeks and days of the year.
Well, it's ancient, very old. I want to say tarot is since like maybe like the 1200s, maybe even earlier than that. A lot of the modern things we have are based on ancient ideas and mysticism, occult, arcane, and it could be used for good, but obviously it's being used to corrupt people.
Well, the playing cards, you add up all the points, it adds to 365. 52 cards, 52 weeks, four suits, four seasons, and those four suits refer to the four tools of the magician on the magician card. So you have the diamonds and the hearts, the clubs. These are all just representatives of the pentagram and the chalice and the staff. It's like these are occult devices encoded into plain sight in your hands. Even the roulette table, you add up all the numbers, you get 666. So what are we really seeing here, in my view? I'm like, well, uh, it seems like the world is in the grip of some kind of. I'm not gonna say the word satanic because that's too vague, but it is in the grip of an
It's
astrotheological cult.
hedonistic. It is definitely hedonistic. I wouldn't call it satanic, but the desire and addiction to bloodshed, violence, debauchery, it's extreme. I mean, every movie, uh, every TV show has violence in it. Every video game, probably not every book, but it's getting that way. It's they're trying to program people to want to be not a healthy, growing, productive individual, but like be their own hero in a sense, and consider everyone as a dragon that they need to slay if they feel threatened in any way.
I think you're right about that. There's been this trend too with like comedy. Ever since Chris Rock got slapped and Dave Chappelle was attacked, and then it occurred to me that look, nobody in comedy is saying, I may not agree with what you have to say. I might not find your jokes funny, but I'll defend your right to speak these things. I don't hear that. I just see people saying, oh, well, if you push too far, you're going to get hit. And that is an inversion, I think, of everything that we used to hold dear about free speech and the free flow of ideas and the respect for the individual. Now it's mob rule. Don't anger the mob.
Oh, absolutely. It's yeah, I feel like the Bible, if it had all of its books, it'd have a lot more context to what's going on nowadays and understanding the sacrifice and like the real identity of what's out there off this planet that's going to come down here and, ascend us and just leave whatever's behind and destroy it or recycle it or whatever. But where was I going with
Well,
this?
I think whatever's coming
It
is coming from, like we were told about, I would say, aliens, alien invasion, etc. But I think what's coming, if anything, is subterranean. And on that Stranger Things, something that was really interesting was at the very beginning, the main character is ready to go fight this thing or whatever when she levitates this multi-ton tank into the air. And it starts off with
right,
levitation. And so I started finding a lot of fascinating connections between levitation and Leviathan. And of course, Leviathan is one of the main names of the devil that the Satanists actually pray to. And Leviathan, you got Eliphas Levi's the guy who created the Baphomet symbol. The Baphomet symbol that the Church of Satan uses spells Leviathan in Hebrew around it. And so what I'm saying here is that showing this character named 11 levitating this big object was about rousing Leviathan, awakening the Kraken. So whatever they're going to bring, I wouldn't look up. I think it's going to come from below.
you think what's good is going to come from like the source of this planet?
Well, I'm just saying that whatever this Kraken thing is, or like if there is any kind of divine or whatever you want to call it, infernal intervention, I think it's coming from below, like the oceans. I don't think there's an outer space. But I'm not close to the idea of what we would call aliens. I just think they've been mislabeled and miscontextualized.
It's maybe it's not considered really like an outer space. They want to make it seem like everything is so far away. All the stars are so far away. The sun so far away. The only thing close to us is the moon. And you think of Star Trek and warp technology, right? I mean, how would you theorize that? You would basically just grab a frequency of a distance, maybe a star far away, lock onto that, and you generate your ship or whatever with that frequency, and boom, you're right there. So, it's all theory, and it's kind of, wishy-washy, and no one really knows because no one's been to outer space, and no one's been really that far under the earth or that far under the ocean, and that's a lot of what's keeping us blind is like, okay, the people that have been out there, what have they seen? What secrets are they keeping? And why haven't they told us about it?
Yes, you know what? I think this is one of the main reasons why my channel is called Infinite Plane Society, is not necessarily about the shape of the world, but are we in a closed or open system? And I think we're in a closed system. I think we're enclosed by ignorance. It may not be limitations by geography. It may not be an ice wall, but there's definitely some ignorance there that's intentional, and it's encoded into all of their rites. The secret rites of the Masons. They put a hood on your head, the hoodwink. And the reason why is that you're ignorant and you're in
Oh
darkness
yeah,
until they show you the light and pull the hood off, which implies that everybody who's not in the temple is blind. We're given false explanations. So I don't buy their explanations, and I think they kill curiosity. I think Star Trek was put there to kill curiosity. So, there's nowhere to go except very, very, very far away. And Captain Kirk was just there to say, just to turn it into fantasy. And I think that's what they've effectively done. They've kind of distanced us from the idea that there might be more land within reach.
it's probably very similar. Like let's say in another plane right now, there's a similar show going on right now talking about the same thing, and maybe people there, they have big eyes, big heads. You know the alien from Men in Black that's born that Will Smith ends up holding.
I'm going to have to watch it because I have not seen it, and I've referenced many points in the movie, but go ahead and fill me in.
I'd say that is like the most accurate depiction of an extraterrestrial from a sea is that little squid baby. And if we go back to anime, you see the big eyes, the big head, small mouth. I mean, if you just recolor that, make the eyes black, the skin gray, you get a gray alien if you take the hair off. So anime has been around since 1960s, I believe, around that time. Astro Boy was like one of the first series, and it started that way. And Japan has had many extraterrestrial encounters. I think there was this one story about this woman. She was brought up to the shore, and she walks out, and she's holding a box. And I don't know where it went, but if you also think about hentai and like the old, it's ancient, it's like feudal Japan artwork of a woman making sex to a squid. It's like, and their ideas of, sexuality, it's like we
Okay,
are
wait, the squid thing is,
similar.
is, is worth talking about here for a second because one, the this Kraken thing is this aquatic intelligence, aquatic aliens, and all the stories of the Nephilim, the stories of angels sleeping with human women. Um, what we're talking about is a different species or race, whatever you call them, of beings, and we're told that they're basically beautiful humans with wings or something. But that's obviously a cover. They might just be hideous, horrible, tentacled things, and always have been. And that's really what a lot of the symbolism would suggest. And hey, really quick here too. Um, there's
Yeah.
there's a I have a book here called Understanding Comics: The Invisible Art by Scott McCloud, and one of the things he talks about is why anime is so effective, and it's about the universality of the faces that they create, and they're more relatable the more simplified they are, and it makes it easier to reach people. So like for example, you have that natural mechanism where you might see a face like in an outlet, you see a couple or a face in a rock. You just naturally see faces, and they tap into this stuff. And so I think it's part of the whole the propagandizing of the masses is of course selling us things.
Pareidolia, right?
Yeah, they tap into that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We can just theorize right now with everything. That's how I've always felt, even with Jurassic Liars and his Elvis predictions and his Trump 8 forehead wound. It's just the theory. We can make connections all day. I mean, we put your name into a gematria calculator, and it's going to give you some evil. It might also give you some good. I think Elvis, though, he's not really going to manifest as a physical Elvis. I think it's just like a symbol. You remember Tupac and
Yes.
him coming back as like a hologram? I think that's what they're going to start doing
Well,
with a lot of these
to JL's
celebrities.
credit though, so he had said, 611 and all this stuff, and it pointed specifically about this manifestation of this thing. And if you look at it as an idea or as a symbol of what Elvis represents, so symbolically, there's quite a lot there with this, rock star, starman, the whole savior from space thing is really kind of built into the symbolism here. But what happened on 6/11 was March for Our Lives, anagram for Elvis.
Oh yeah,
But you have
yeah.
these big events symbolizing the Kraken being released, the beast from the sea, which he says, of course, he correlated with Elvis. Well, interestingly enough, though, in 1973, Elvis had that international concert beamed off a satellite, first ever international satellite concert. 1.5 billion people saw Elvis's face in 73. And so 1973, Elvis and Watergate are kind of mirrored right now, interestingly enough. Because right now you have Watergate happening again with 1/6. And can you deny that 1.5 billion people have seen the face of Elvis this year? Considering that movie and its propagation. So that symbol, that icon, that god, that idol did manifest as he was pointing it would. And I think it does carry with it, though, this I think it's tapping into our innate or the mass mind's innate desire for a savior, a desire they're probably programming into us. But yeah, I think there's something to it. I'm not 100% a believer in any religion, but there is a bigger script here, and it clearly involves the use of biblical iconography.
I think a lot of it comes from the Christian Bible because it's so spread out. It's just I want to say over the past 20 years, I've seen more uh, connections to Revelation than any other prophecy. I mean, I don't really study any other prophecies because they're not really easy to get a hold of, but think about what happened in 2010, or was it 2008? The iPhone came out, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think that's about right.
Now, it mentions in the book that people, actually two great beasts, the one with two horns and the one with seven heads, come together. I'm just ad-libbing it right now, and to create a living image. Now, a living image, people back then thought it was like a statue that gets up, moves around, but if you think of, a TV, smartphone, computer screen, it's a living image, right?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it would fit. In fact, you could say that the image of the beast that everybody worships is the TV in many ways, or the
TV,
television. Uh-huh.
it's a screen. It's that's how I've always felt. So
I agree
way
with you.
back
It's the
when
screen.
TV first came out, because I don't think the Book of Revelation is. People want to think, oh, all these events happen within a week. No, this is like thousands of years of all these events progressing, and the mark of the beast started with the TV. Because now we have credit cards. They're talking about the chips in the hands. I mean, even if you don't get a chip, they're probably going to take cash away. And most people, they have their phone in their left inner breast pocket in their jacket, right? They bring it out with their right hand and they swipe it, pay for
Well,
whatever.
okay,
So it's in your right hand.
let me bring this up really quick here, because you brought up JL, Jurassic Liars. He always mentions this, and I mentioned this earlier, that Elvis
Yeah.
Presley took that shot on TV on October the 28th on Bill Gates's first birthday, and October 28th is the 301st day of the year. So, if you're 1 year old on that day, you're 666 days old. And that's how old Bill Gates was when he probably watched Elvis taking the shot. Just kind of interesting here because you correlate the shot with salvation, with this political schism, and then of course just the symbol of the needle as it's connected to everything else we've been talking about in the last couple of years. It correlates with this marking of the beast and the integration into this new matrix, which is a mixture of. I've seen some references to iron and clay in some recent videos, but the idea of merging the transhuman thing, of merging man with the not only just the internet and the meta, but also merging us with our technology to the point where we're different species, which I think is a false idea of salvation or transcendence. It's part of this new paradigm, but the whole transhuman or the singularity, and the guy who created or coined the term singularity, his name was John Newman, like new man. So I think it's all
Oh,
BS, but
man.
this is clearly what they're selling the masses.
The amount of like symbolic connections is just insane. It's dizzying.
Okay, Echo Charlie says the monkeypox vax might leave a mark. The smallpox did. See, that's another thing too. The word mark, and I don't look. And I also think this mask of the beast. I said it jokingly, but if the devil's greatest trick was convincing the world he didn't exist, is that's like kind of an accepted common bit of wisdom there. Like he tricked everybody. Then why is it such a stretch to think he couldn't have just switched out, let's say, an S for an R? So everybody's waiting for a mark on their face when it's really just a mask. And if you look at 2020, it shows you if it was a mark, would anybody have said no?
Hmm.
I mean, except from the
I've
small
been
fringe, of
watching
course.
this guy. He's a Bible reader. Once lost, now found sheep, and he was talking about how, uh, like in the Greek translation, I can't remember, pharmakia and simplest form of cloth. I'm having a hard time recall, but a mark is so much more than just one thing. This is all about just one thing. It's about multiple things. I mean, if anyone has gotten it, or if they there's still hope. There's
Well,
still
yeah. Let me
hope.
let me bring this up too. I want to point out on this channel, I am 100% free speech here. I support views that are anti. I support vote views that are pro, and but I'm definitely here for analyzing the truth of the matter, and so that's why we're looking at all the meanings here. Like it's worth pointing out that pharmacy comes from a word meaning sorcery or witchcraft, and the iconography is
Yeah, that was
undeniable.
it. That was it. Sorceries in Greek translation was pharmakia.
And pharmakia, the pharmakos, is the sacrificial victim, the pharmakos. So uh,
Ooh.
these are all very interesting. And then how much they talk about sacrifice. And you're being selfish if you're not doing it. You're not sacrificing yourself for the collective. So I agree. It's not just a one-time thing in your soul. I think no, this is about a worldview, and it's selling you into soul-denying collectivism. This WEF built back better world that they're envisioning, where you own nothing and you're happy. And of course, your whole life is screened through the phone, so you won't know anything worth knowing.
So there has to be an event that just pulls everyone away from these images. Some something that man cannot do, something that no governing body can do, something that would just strike terror in all of these mighty men and all of these merchants. It's all about selling merchandise nowadays.
Oh, you know what's going to happen then? Check this out. You might find this interesting. So Jeff Bezos, talking about like richest man in the world, he is the modern day Nimrod, who built the Tower of Babel. And I say this because one, Blue Origin, the rocket company, but Amazon, A to Z, the trip from heaven to the heavens from the earth, uniting all the world, one language, the internet. But here he is, richest man in the world, consolidating everything, and of course censoring like crazy. But he represents this because he's built this big thing. He's challenging, he's actually flaunting his wealth in the face of an angry God, the globe, because he's the one who believes in global
Ooh.
warming. He's part of it. But he has his big yacht. He's flexing on his yacht like I don't care what globe thinks, which is Nimrod saying I don't care what God thinks. And in Virginia, Bezos has an actual headquarters called the Helix Building that's under construction that's designed to look like, weirdly, the classical image of the Tower of Babel. But anyway, where this leads is this. In season 1, episode 6 of Inside Job, Bezos is on his yacht, which is his mega yacht, another symbol of this Tower of Babel, and the Kraken pulls him under. So if you think about the Kraken symbolism and the Tower of Babel, and again the IS, this is just, to me, it's telling me yes, we're about to see the big merchants, as he described, the big system taken down by the Kraken. It's going to split.
These men have no idea what's coming towards them. They have no idea. Well, they might. They might. In fact, they might just be suicidal, is how I feel. They're so miserable with all their wealth, money, and power. They're offering themselves up as sacrificial lambs to the great eternal one. They're trying to force God's hand by having all of this symbolism and, trying to fulfill all these prophecies. They're stupid. Really, they're stupid. It wouldn't have been hard at all to just preserve humanity in the right way. They say climate change. I mean, the climate's going to change. This planet could pop like a heavy metal popcorn kernel at any given moment
You
with
know,
whatever natural thing happens.
like I'm inclined to think that the world is unchanging. In all likelihood, I'm more inclined to think stationary until proven otherwise. But that it's the ball model, the idea that we live on a ball in space. Part of it is, and they always say this when they go up there, it's fragile. Captain Kirk can't stop crying because the Earth is so damaged. It's the idea that the Earth is fragile and about to break. It's about giving you a basic insecurity about existence, anxiety, existential angst about, oh, are we going to have a future? Is it going to be dystopian? Are we going to be underground? And I think that's all more or less cultural pessimism programmed by the media. I think everything is eternal, and I don't
Oh
think the world's in
yeah,
danger.
yeah.
But the thing is, who knows what they can manufacture or create? I don't believe in plagues. I mean, I don't believe in pandemics. But look what they did. They can simulate something, and everybody larps along. Hey, let me go ahead and
It
address a
is
commenter really quick. Goyim
okay.
TV,
Yeah.
really quick here. He accuses me of gatekeeping because I don't want to let him dominate the comment section, but I offered him a 1 hour phone call on Skype. So if you want to call me Goyim TV, I'll give you your wrench back. But until you call me, I'm just going to have to consider you a troll. And nobody can say I'm censoring him because I've given him a full hour. He's been avoiding me. So for the record, Goyim TV is an internet coward until he contacts me on Skype. Okay, so anyway, this is all very interesting, and this is your first time calling. I'm glad you called in. I follow JL26, and I look, he's found some compelling stuff that I'm unpacking a lot of these things. I go to these videos. He talked about the date 8/4 and how it's the 216th day of the year, and I look into that number, and it's a huge number with Pythagoras, and it connects to the phoenix, which again, phoenix is a big symbol in all of these things. It ties into this dying, resurrecting Sun King. Elvis has got phoenix all over him, but you've heard him. You can go deep into these things.
Yeah.
And the question is it are we cherry picking? Is it pareidolia? Or are we noticing patterns? And to me, it's really about receipts. Can you validate it? Can you prove it? Can you point to their reports? And all I can say is, um, I don't know how real these things are, but this is the story they're telling. And, so I'm not sure where it's going, but this Kraken thing seems to be on the horizon.
I think a lot of it, since the higher elites are following a script, obviously one that's very ancient. If we kind of put together all of like the connections with all these main religions, we might actually get, you know, what they're following. But that's just my theory. Um,
No, we
so
will.
yeah,
Look, one thing we can say, and this is based on observation and studying their stuff, they are definitely focused on the black cube, Saturn. They're focused on the god of this world as they conceptualize it, and it's the god of time, space.
well, they've
uh,
made themselves the gods of this world,
Yeah, well,
or
yeah,
maybe they're working under the god of this world. I
well,
mean,
the Pope,
as someone who's studying,
the
oh, the Pope,
the
the
Pope is
poop.
what he's the vicar of Christ. So no, they do see themselves as embodying the gods. So that's why I think it's significant that Elvis was worshipped as he and is still, because what you're talking about when you say like in the context of magical ritual, the high priest and the priestess are the sun and the moon incarnate. The Pope is the sun. That's how they. That's their thinking. So when you see Elvis on the stage, you're actually seeing people worshiping not the rock star, but the falling star. They're worshiping Lucifer, the meteor, the falling star. The Lucifer falls like lightning,
The bringer of light, the
and
one who's on the TV,
and
the
then
one who
yes, exactly,
is on the living image.
the living image, the black cube, the black square. And if you look at the devil tarot card, he's sitting on a black box, and this all ties in because it shows man and woman in bondage to matter, and they're enjoying themselves. They're not fighting against the chains. They're not fighting the devil, and he's holding an inverted torch to symbolize endarkenment. So I think we are
I
being
I
put into
talked
the
to
dark.
someone I met on Omegle who was doing tarot readings, and she told me that like the hand signs, you know how the devil has like the Spock sign with the thumb out.
Yes, Vulcan.
That means what you see is what you get, is what she explains to me. Like, here's the veil covering both of your eyes, and on the Hierophant card, he has the two fingers up with the O with the other two fingers, and that means as above, so below. So that's like that's the struggle with belief that so many people are having, is because we do invest so much time in these images that are living, that we don't want to believe that there's anything else.
Yeah, that's true. I've been saying that the fundamental thing here is the war on real by fake, and this is a divide between the metaverse and the meatverse. And the more the metaverse dominates our lives, the more fake will continue to heap more levels of fakery upon fakery. And that's where we're at. There are layers to this thing,
Ever
but
since VR, I was like a really heavy video game player up until like the whole DLC pay to win era of video gaming, and then VR comes out. I mean, if you think of like VR goggles, it's an image that is in your mind that you have on your forehead.
yep, exactly. And if you look at the symbolism around any of the video game consoles, you'll find cubes, you'll find the X, you'll find like the Xbox, the box, the cube. Yeah, it's all part of it, and it ties into the cube that Hellraiser's character Pinhead carries, which is it's a the box is the cube. It's a symbol, I think, of soul imprisoned in matter. And I'm not saying that this
Do you
place is
know
a
what that
prison,
box
but
is called?
the
I know what it's called. It's called the lament configuration.
yeah, the lament configuration. And when you break down Pinhead, so he's the guy with the bald guy with the nails in his head, but he's torn to pieces by the hooks. Well, that's Osiris who gets chopped into many pieces. It's the sun god in death at night when he's been chopped up, and he has to be reconstituted to be resurrected. And so the cross is an unfolded cube. So the cube is the symbol of him when he's in the underworld. That's why he puts his hands out and he says, I am the way. He makes these jokes about him being Jesus because he is portraying the role of the sun god in death or the Saturnian aspect. And then the name Pinhead, that's actually the name of the Wizard of Oz. So there's another connection there with the underworld, hell, Oz. Very interesting connections there.
The gouge. I really do like the Hellraiser movies.
I do
I
too.
hate to say.
Hellbound Heart, great book. I think part six, Inferno, tells a really good story about the guy who lets his flesh dominate his soul. And what Pinhead represents is the judgment, where you're at the end of your life, and did you recognize that you were a soul, or are you just a meat sack? And if you're a meat sack, you get ripped to pieces. But if you're a soul, it doesn't matter because your soul moves on. So being ripped to pieces by Pinhead isn't necessarily a punishment unless you just lived a totally worthless life. So he's a psychopomp, he's a judge, but he's not the devil. We
Well,
are.
the main reason these people manifest, these Cenobites, is because they're disenchanted with life, and the lament configuration comes to them. And like he says in the movie, we are demons to some, angels to others. And
Someone in the chat said
if
that
we,
at the exact second you
if
said it. Angels to some, demons to others.
oh, synchronicity, huh? The game Magic the Gathering.
Yes.
There is a faction or a species in it called Phyrexia, and they have a set released in 2011 called New Phyrexia, and it represents the nine hells, and they're very dogmatic. They're a very dogmatic species, and their belief is all of it is for the great, what was it called? Like all will be one, They don't waste any material, waste not, want not. So if there's like bits and pieces of people, they're just like the Cenobites, but way more hellfire. And they amalgamate, different things together, make horrors. It's really cool. It is really cool. I love it. The story is great, but it's that's like the divine, not divine, but like the unholy thing that the New World Order is trying to come from is that, if we talk about, all of this like human sacrifice and like adrenochrome and, where all these people are going, it's just like a ripoff of, I don't know.
Well, what do you think about this? I considered for a time, like the lament configuration, the cube, same thing as the TV, or same thing as going into a movie theater where you're inside the cube. So I'm looking at this thing as, are we in any way having our souls or our energy tapped into or harvested in some tangible way? Or, I hate to use the word spiritual, but there's got to be some kind of reason for this intense need to have all of us focused on one thing. And that's why I keep referencing the monolith as an important symbol from Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Uh, that has, and I talked about Kubrick today. So if you look at Ground Zero, there's a Hilton hotel designed to look like the monolith right there overlooking Ground Zero. And this is hugely significant because 9/11 was part of the inauguration of the new age as we move to a one world. So they tear down the two towers, and then 13 years later, the new one comes up. But anyway, the one represents the monolith, the new monotheism. But it's about this one world religion that's based on, I think, scientism and a few other things. But it's the same old pagan or mystery Babylon, but dressed up like science fiction. And so your smartphone, just this black rectangle in your hand, is an altar to their god. It synchronizes you with the god
Oh,
of this world.
exactly. I mean, if you're browsing anything on it, all of them nowadays have that face camera. I mean, it's literally capturing you and it's marking you on your forehead. We all have a number. So if we really want to be saved, if we want to become, you know, organic instead of artificial, we would have to just completely get rid of all of this, all of this current ideology of what you need, what society is pushing, all of it, and just live out in nature, essentially.
Well, this is all getting interesting. I don't know exactly where this thing is heading, but I mean, I do see from the predictive programming some idea here that they're going to make it maybe even desirable, order out of chaos, problem reaction solution, where people will ask for a perfectly censored internet. And this is the trick. They get you to buy into the idea of a pandemic. We revise society, so we live a different way. We know now how to lock down. We have a new panel of experts. But I think the next thing is they're going to convince us we need a similar restructuring of the internet for our own safety because mind viruses. And I think all of it, though, is getting us into the point where there is some kind of one unifying set of beliefs that everyone marches underneath, like the new universal religion. And universal means, well, Catholic means universal. And I think that's what they're gearing towards. And I think that's why we're seeing so much censorship. And I don't know why they emphasize all this religious or revelation type of scripting over everything. Have you looked into NASA's use of a company of the group NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration? They use NOAA to warn us of the floods. Have you looked into that? That
No, this is the first time I heard of this.
Okay, if you look into them, NOAA is the one that always warns us of the floods and global warming, and they use a symbol of their big ark, like their big ship, and their warning satellite, and a dove. Well, Noah had his ark and a dove that told him when the flood was over, and he was warned by an angel. So you can see how they replaced Noah warning us of the flood for our wickedness, as warned by the angels, with a modern day Noah warning us about a flood because of our carbon footprints and our pollution, warned by who? The satellite. So everything is so templated off of the Old Testament and New Testament to me that it's the same people are clearly in control. Whoever wrote the Bible, whoever created the religions, they're creating our media. It's kind of my point. Same forces at work.
It's definitely all constructed. If we're talking about like planned destruction, uh, all these floods in China, they're caused by dams that the CCP made, and all these areas that are flooded, they're like deeply flooded, and they're big towns, and they're kind of suburban, fairly rural, you know, simple people, and they lost everything because of a certain dam being built. So that's kind of like what's happening is that people in control are actively creating situations that just destroy more lives because they want to follow the Georgia Guidestones and get that number all the way down so they can worship their God as a smaller collective.
Okay, now that's interesting there too. The idea that they want to bottleneck humanity and have a brainwashed starting point from ground zero. So that makes sense, and I don't see them as doing that necessarily, but the Georgia Guidestone idea ties into this monolith idea because it's an anonymous source. We don't know who wrote it. So it's like the Bible. It's like this anonymous authority. It has authority when it is anonymous for some reason. And so now at NATO they have this thing called the digital monolith, which is just like the Georgia Guidestones, but it's digital
Right.
and it's like fight climate change, um, support this, support that, support the thing of the week. It's just telling you how to be one with everybody. And it to me it's like now I don't think they want to reduce the population. I think they want to reduce the population of free thinkers or reduce the number. So I think that they can have 10 billion people as long as the number of free thinkers doesn't go higher than 500 million or something. I don't think they actually want
Well,
to kill us.
they need their slaves.
They
I,
need
I
their
think
loosh.
that
Yep.
number represents like those who are in control, really.
Oh, interesting. That's probably even more likely. And that's why I'm not really so vaxophobic necessarily. I think that's more about the cattle being tagged. The new crown being installed for the new age, the new order, they have to find out what's our inventory like. And that's to me is just sort of like a
Right.
census. It's like a census, but a little more force behind it, a little more ability to find more information. And it's also about the destruction of privacy. I'm so annoyed that things that are private, like your vax status or your pregnant, like these things are now public, and it's being made a matter of public interest that your private becomes public. And to me, that's also something we should resist. But anyway,
Well, there's like a complete AI that does like a little algorithm on each of us individually. It looks at our search history on the internet. It tracks us. They probably know more about our desires than we do. So if you're walking down the street one day and you have your smartphone on you, there's usually, not usually, but rarely, but it does happen, a scripted event, knowing you'd make a certain choice. So we are already programmed by this.
yeah, it's true. Look, we're born into the matrix. We're born into this bondage or whatever, however you want to look at it. But like, I think it's important to recognize that they didn't start faking the news with Sandy Hook. They didn't start faking things with 9/11, and the history is written by the same people that write the news, that write the media. So I like to see, or I like to look at this think tank that we have here, which started in like 2017, as a ground zero. And this is sort of a ground zero for what we know versus what we merely thought we knew. So we're separating knowledge from beliefs and finding that we don't know as much as we thought, but we have more questions that are worthy of answering, and other people have settled for false explanations. And so that's kind of where we're at, and I think that's where we've always been. But hopefully, they don't EMP the net before we figure some more things out.
Something's going to break through for the good. I feel it in the air. I'm seeing it in nature. It's it's coming around. There's a lot of people at work in the system that really do care about it. They really do like life. They like liberty. They are very accepting of free will and all this. But we just need to basically chain up the devil and cast him into the lake of fire at this point, because it's so many people have this like one sin that they keep doing every day that is digital or whatnot. And we just, as a collective of positive consciousness or whatever, need to create a community, not one world religion or a new world order, and just expose these devils, bind them, and get rid of them. And I
That's
don't mean
that's kind
execute
of what we
them.
do. Look, on this channel, I call Infinite Plane Radio inoculation for the mind war because when you expose the methodology of manipulators and liars, then further confrontations with liars and manipulations are easy to see through. So you can't tell everybody who every liar is, and that's the fallacy here of some of these people who say, "Oh, well, these are the bad guys. Just look out for them." Well, no, you can't tell us who the bad guys are, and then we're settled. You need to show us how to identify the the actions. So that's what I'm about here is unmasking not who done it, but what is it. And it is a monolithic control over all media, religion, education on certain key points that constrain mankind within a collective worldview. And the one we're in is a doomsday cult. You can't deny that. The true believers in the quote science of the day think the world's going to end in 1,028 days. Like we're in a doomsday cult.
Oh yeah, but a common theme for like, let's say we're in a movie right now, and this is like the first 30 minutes into it. The Doom Cult has gathered all of their artifacts to summon this entity that they're trying to summon, and this always happens. Very rarely it doesn't. So they summon this entity. They're in the works of summoning this entity. This entity is summoned. What does that entity usually do? It destroys that which summoned it because it was put into a world and it's demanded to serve these people that summoned it. And once they do this, everyone that shares that wavelength with that entity, it will call all those people back. Everything starts going good for all the good people in Revelation when the angel of the abyss is summoned out of the bottomless pit.
Okay, the
Because
abyss.
he has
That's Point
the
Nemo.
abyss.
That's where I think Point Nemo, the spacecraft cemetery, that's where Lovecraft pointed the squid-headed Cthulhu. That's where the Kraken is. All, these things are all connecting to this, you could say reptilian or some kind of squid-like being, but the abyss is key here. And it in Lovecraft's story, it is telepathically connected to all of its bloodline descendants. So the idea that everybody who's of the blood of this thing will be tapped into its hive mind all at one time. And I found some interesting stuff along this with symbolism with the hexagram associated with Saturn and this thing, and then of course the beehive, which was the original symbol for the Illuminati. You know, the Templars, the beehive, and the beehive with its little hexagons. And I'm just looking at it as hive mind. There's some kind of program. There's some kind of idea here of a hive mind that is about to be awakened, and I think that might be Leviathan. That the Leviathan they're awakening is some kind of, and it could just be collectivism, communism. It doesn't have to be a bunch of soul hijacked, demonically possessed zombies killing. You know, I think it could actually just be
No.
collectivism and total, I don't know, spiritual blindness, I guess. But the main thing is just Marxist revolution, which is basically, in a way, it's very materialistic, but it's very much
Oh,
about, you know,
excruciatingly. I mean, I've struggled finding a girlfriend for over a decade. Yeah, I've been out of high school since 2012, and that was a pretty weird year. Wasn't 2012 the day they finished the Hadron Collider and turned it on?
oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, thanks for bringing that up. They're cranking it on the 5th, and again, it's just a ritual, but whatever. It means something because they place a high value on their bizarre rituals, and no place on earth has more bizarre, openly, flagrantly satanic rituals than CERN that I can think of. Can you think of any other place where they're doing science where they have people in goat costumes and dressed like demons opening portals?
Um, Let me think about that real quick. America?
Right. No, you're right. In fact, I saw this ceremony on 9/11, 2002, the day after 9/11. Bizarre ceremonies, people at ground zero, and I have to go back and watch those now in retrospect. Everything's symbolic. Towers are 33 years old. They pull them down 13 years later. A new one opens on 11/3. It's 1776 feet high. And 11/3, that number is hugely significant with this whole Kraken and the destruction of Seattle. And take a guess. Guess what Godzilla's birthday happens to be?
9/11,
11/3. But, you know,
11/3.
good enough. So, you know, it's super consistent when you get into how this story, whatever they're releasing, this Kraken thing, it's been told to us on many fronts, and I think it's what I call it. I say monolith because or metascript because it's told to you through the news, It's connected to the movies. It's in the entertainment. It's in the comics. It's unavoidable and inescapable. And predictive programming is what we call it because we're always looking back. But on this channel, we've been looking at concurrent programming because it's happening all the time. It's just that you call it predictive programming if you didn't notice it when it happened.
Hmm.
I can give you examples. That's one of the things I've been talking about with Stranger Things, where um, based on the storyline of the last season of Stranger Things, I was able to point out that we're going to see March for Our Lives come out because it's a David Hogg like character, and that this is part of the awakening of this Kraken energy or whatever it is. And right after, yeah, sure enough, and on a date that was also pointed out in the movie, David Hogg, March for Our Lives, 6/11. Very, very significant example of concurrent programming. And this was the season that started with a warning. This might trigger memories of what just happened on the news in Uvalde, Texas.
Now, if we think about all of these events that are violent, kind of like the Uvalde shooting, uh, a lot of this is sponsored by people who are posing as good. The angel of light is really the deceiver. We talk about MK Ultra. I mean, the numbers don't add up with these events. They, an 18-year-old kid that works at Dairy Queen somehow gets $10,000 worth of equipment, and he was very disturbed. And that's the type of easy, strings that these handlers can pull on. And we all have these smart devices. I mean, I've done some weird stuff, and I think a lot of it comes from just this technology. They can vibrate at a certain frequency and just program you. And this programming can happen weeks, months, and an event can happen. And next thing you know, it's there to change the law or to make people want change to benefit,
Right. That
the
event had
NWO.
all kinds of political figures attached to it. Matthew McConaughey was there, and I pointed this out the other day because McConaughey was
Mr.
born,
Click Click.
clicky guy, was born in that town, and the whole town. If this thing is a psyop, the whole town's got to be controlled from the police on down. Everybody's a part of it on some level. And funnily enough, if you look at the Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation, Matthew McConaughey's in
Yeah.
it, and that's where you find out the reason why they're doing this. It turns out that the whole town is part of the same cult. Matthew McConaughey drives for Illuminati Towing, and he brings the victims over to the compound where they get killed. So if you run and tell the cops, "Hey, there's these psychos over there. They're killing my friends," the police will say, "Oh, I'll go deal with it." You go in the cop car, and the cop takes you to the slaughterhouse because they're all related. They're all connected. And so Uvalde kind of reminded me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation because his Duper's Delight showed he's in on it.
So it's really backwards. Those who have godliness don't, well, a godly appearance. Matthew McConaughey is pretty good looking. He's got all the money to look that way. Still young, still in shape. But as that beautiful person, he's kind of like a hook, a shiny hook in the ocean that some fish is just going to bite. So we talk about, the devil comes as an angel of light. So I wonder if the Savior, well, in fact, I know the Savior is going to be the most scary thing anyone's ever witnessed.
Right. Well, my take on all this stuff is really that this is the year Pluto's return ties into America's founding, and so I'm looking forward to July 4th. So definitely stay in touch and call back because there's going to be some interesting things occurring for sure. Trump
All
announcing
right.
his
Thank
second
you.
coming, and yeah, thanks for calling, and I'll be checking in on JL26's channel. So thanks for letting me know you came from his channel. Uh, I'll
God bless
definitely
you, man.
cool. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Okay, first time caller there. Thanks again. Says we're on the homepage of DLive, which is very surprising considering that I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if they're having problems. Okay, so I think the guy in the chat here named Keek wants to talk. Yeah, you can call in if you want to call in, but let me go ahead and I wanted to get Skype open, but if you don't want to do Skype, that's fine. Okay, yeah, so the reason why I'm banning you, Keek, is just because if you're going to use ethnic slurs, then you're going to have to call in and explain yourself. I can't let you just put that stuff in the chat because you're trying to get us banned. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the people who use words like that are actually working for some kind of intelligence agencies because they want to make it seem like all free thinkers hate this group. All free thinkers are fans of this political ideology. Like, I'm not a fan of Trump or Hitler. Like, I'm not into any of these political leaders. I'm just not. I don't worship them. That doesn't make me a liberal. It doesn't make me a Jew or whatever you're saying that I am just because I don't agree with you. And it's just kind of strange. A lot of people have a hard time tolerating differences of opinions. Now, he won't do Skype. The guys from Goyim TV, and I looked into them. They've been on CNN. They've been on, what was it? Some other news agency covered them because, look, these guys will put on signs on the freeways that say stuff like Jews did 9/11. And it's like, are you sure? I don't know if 9/11 even happened the way they described it. Much less can we ascribe the blame to one person when this is obviously done by multiple countries, multiple media agencies, multiple interests. So they seem like a limited hangout. But yeah, I'll have you. My phone number is 833-311-1984. Driftwood says, it's funny this channel's so small and they're after you. Well, look, these guys from Goyim TV have received mainstream media coverage, and the guy who runs it, he looks like he looks Mexican, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I mean, Nick Fuentes is one of the lead national white nationalists in America today, calling for an all-Christian government, and he's Mexican. But it's like, I don't care. America is multicultural. It's multi-pluralistic. I mean, we have all kinds of people here, and you want to say only this group should run the place. You're in the wrong place. I'm sorry, you didn't read the rules. You're not going to change it. But anyway, phone's open 833-311-1984 if you want to if you want to sell us on your worldview, by all means. And that's another part I find kind of strange, though. Proselytizers. Last month, I was proselytized to by Mandela affected. I was proselytized to by white, black, nationalist, Hebrew Israelite simulation flat earthers, and their god, Yahushua. And then I was proselytized to by these guys. They're like, will you be my Hitler? It's like, no, you're not going to use my platform to promote your ideology. Get your own platform. So they invited me over to their platform. I looked at it, Goyim TV. They won't approve my account there. And I'm like, well, there's no women here. It's all just five dudes. It's like a internet neo-Nazi sausage party. I'm not trying to make fun, but like, that's not my hangout. If I had that bad of taste, I'd be at 4chan or something. There's a reason why we're here. We like what we do here. We don't like what you guys do in your sandbox, but you're welcome to join us. And if I get interested in, if I need to read an old beaten copy of Mein Kampf, I know where to go. It's just like it's expired propaganda. It's like the people who still fawn over Donald Trump's tweets from 2 years ago. It's like, let your political leaders go, your misleaders. Think for yourself. These collectivists don't like me. That's what it actually is. You know what the smallest minority is? It's not the oppressed whites that are being genocided. The smallest minority is and always will be the individual. And the individual doesn't really get any respect from any collectivist group, no matter what their particular ideology. So, yeah, I'm just not going to buy it. You can find other buyers, though. That's what's weird. Religion sells. Beliefs sell. Nonsense sells. You can sell the crap out of whatever you're into. But why are you going to try to sell it to somebody who's obviously too smart for it or too appraised of its actual worthlessness? Okay, so we'll continue. There's so many awesome things to talk about. This has been a very, very interesting week. I've been looking into the alt-right and this whole 1-6 thing. Obviously, anybody calling 1-6 a false flag is not appraised of what the thing really is, and it's very questionable that anybody would use that phrase today, knowing what we know about perception management and psychological operations. Let me play this clip. Human meat, plant-based burger. Dare to taste it. Vegan burger marketed as
Welcome
tasting
back.
like human meat wins award. This is 1973. Okay, this is interesting to note. I didn't realize that. Soylent Green takes place in 2022. But Soylent Green came out in 1973. So 1973 has a few connections right now. Watergate, Soylent Green being two of the main ones. Also Elvis, of course. Okay, let's see here. Driftwood says, I am Mandela affected. You are brutal, but Armin Raw brought me here. I appreciate your back and forth. Okay, the Mandela effect topic is fascinating, and I have a documentary. It's in the works, and it's a documentary. It's not a hit piece. It's not a slander. I think the topic should be a gateway to other things as well. I understand why people go towards the number. I mean, go towards the idea. They reach towards it, why they find it to be attractive or interesting. Like, what's not interesting about the idea that reality shifted and a lot of people are just jolted or confused by something? But there's quite a lot. There's quite a lot to unpack there. It goes into eyewitness testimony, tainted witnesses, suggestion. There are many things there, and even if I'm wrong and Mandela effects are real, it's worth knowing the things that you learn when unpacking other possible explanations. Infinite Plane Radio.
Tim,
Hey, how are you doing today?
John the Plumber.
Oh, nice. John the Plumber. So glad it wasn't a Nazi. Just kidding. I'm open to those
Hey,
guys
brother.
calling, but we're over it. Yeah, how you doing today, John?
So last time I spoke to you, I think like my card expired, my debit card, and the bank sent me a new card. So now it's time for me to redo my Patreon because I care about and I want to keep contributing. But now every time I listen, everyone keeps talking about this new app called Ko-Fi. I never knew anything or heard anything about it. Is it a competitor to Patreon? And is it better for you? Like, I want to re-engage my subscription. I want to make sure you get paid, but I want to do it through a platform that reflects our values.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate that.
So is Patreon not the one anymore?
Well, I would say this on Patreon, and I'm glad you brought this up. I just created a new tier. It's $10, and the reason I did this is I have a podcast I'm working on that goes deep into all of these topics, like the more of the occult stuff, but into the nuance, and I'm calling it tentatively Tim Osmond's Dark Matter. But this podcast will be only available to tier 3 members at Patreon, $10 a month. So Patreon's cool if you still want to do that, and I always appreciate your support, but I started that on the 1st. I haven't even mentioned it yet.
But what is Ko-Fi just like Patreon, but better? I don't know.
The difference is, okay, Ko-Fi is used for super chats. So if you put anything into Ko-Fi, it lets you put a message on the screen. It goes to the same place, and they don't take a fee, which is actually kind of nice. So from that perspective, and then also Patreon does have a long record of kicking its creators. So that's why I got Ko-Fi as a backup in case we ever get, booted.
Man, I wish you would just like have your own entire thing. Like, I don't know what kind of servers you would need to do it, but I wish like somehow we could just say screw YouTube, screw everybody, screw all these where you could just be all in house. I think
It's
your
gonna be there.
content is that good.
We'll get there. We'll get there. I guarantee it. Before the end of the summer, I have plans getting back into publishing. I'm taking all my books off Amazon. I'm going to get them printed locally, and I'll do better in every way that way. And of course, by then we'll have, I think, this new podcast I'm working on. I do anticipate it'll bring in a lot of new listeners. And again, this is this think tank. I'm not a collectivist, but this is a collective work here. It's a group of people who are all what I describe this thing as is a multi-million piece puzzle, and all kinds of people are invited to bring their pieces to it.
Yeah. Hey, did you see that video I sent you about, it almost looks like a Crater Earth video. That's like some guy in the lower left-hand corner talking for about 20 minutes about some science fiction book that he got based, well, first he got the map. He said, this map is so interesting. And what it looks like is it looks like a bunch of, what do they call that? The azimuthal equidistant map. It looks like that, sort of, but like 20 or 50 of them all strung together like a big piece of Swiss cheese. Imagine like a huge slice of Swiss cheese, and there's multiple pockets. Now, they're not all the same. They're not all identical. They're probably all different, but they all have continents. They all have their own sun, moon system, but you can navigate them. And somebody wrote a book about it. I just was scrolling through YouTube and came across this video. I think I sent it to you in
Facebook. You sent it to me on Facebook. I haven't looked at it yet.
Something.
I'll take a look because that sounds very intriguing to me. Cowboy Bebop had something similar.
It looks just like the Crater Earth, but in color. Like if you could take the Crater Earth videos and somehow add some kind of CGI to it and make multiple continents in each crater, it was very appealing. But then I started having the idea. I said, you know what? But they're just making it in a plane. They're only making it in a plane form. Like everything is in a flat plane, and there's multiple craters in this one surface plane, two-dimensional plane. But then I got to thinking. I said, you know, why does it have to be like that? Because I was probably listening to a lot of Mr. Mythos videos in the last couple of weeks about the Agartha and stuff. So then I started thinking, why does it have to be 2D? If we live in this realm of multiple pockets, if it was three-dimensional, it would sort of look like something like a sponge or a cave. I mean, like, what is a cave? It's like an air bubble and rock. That's what a cave is. So maybe we live in some kind of, instead of space, you ever hear like science bozos saying like, oh, we've done the math and 90% of the universe, the matter of the universe is missing. We can't find it.
Dark matter. You stumbled on something
matter.
here.
Well, it's because you've been lied to. You've been told that 90% of space, the universe, is emptiness. Well, we live in the pockets of emptiness. That's what space is. But 90% of it is a huge cave. Maybe that's what Plato was talking about. Maybe the universe is just
Okay, so you mentioned dark matter. There's a show I watched called His Dark Materials. And this is intriguing because it's about, if you go north, it doesn't take you to the North Pole. This is other realm where people have different abilities, powers. And it's more like, it's almost like Hogwarts in a way, where you have this parallel world where there's magic. But this is like, geographically, our globe isn't what they say. And there's more regions over here, different regions. And in those regions, they actually harvest the children kidnapped from here, and they take them over there for adrenochrome or something equivalent in the movie. It's called His Dark Materials. But the thing is, at the intro, and if you just watch the introduction, it shows the Earth, and then it shows the side view, and it looks like another Earth below ours, like it's stacked, and another one, and another one. So worlds stacked upon worlds, like sandwiched, many stories, and like deep space being infinitely deep down.
I like that one too. I'm sure that's probably comes from some kind of like Hindu. I've seen like diagrams of like stacked, layered, almost like a book, how pages in a book are stacked on top of you. I've thought of that one too. I have no idea what it is, but I mean, when I saw this guy's video like a week ago about like a Crater Earth, I was like, this is great, but it's still 2D. I mean, maybe we live in like one 2D subsection, but I kind of imagine it as probably infinite. See, that's a way that we could still have our infinity is maybe the cave goes on infinity in all directions. Like we can only map out the caverns, closest to us.
Yeah, so instead of
and in a way,
space,
it's not
all
much different.
Right.
It's not much different from standard science, right? Standard science says things like, oh, well, there's these star systems, and we're all spread up really far away, light years far away, yada, yada, and it's just nothing in between. Well, I mean, like, how different is that if it was like just full of rock? We still have to like navigate how to get there, and it just all sounds like bullshit to me. But it feels like almost like the powers that be, like they've directed our attention toward up for the last 100 years, when maybe we should be looking in. Like maybe to go out, we got to go in. I don't know.
This sounds like Alice in Wonderland. And interestingly enough, uh, this whole idea of Wonderland is a hole in the ground, right? But if you look into Lewis Carroll, he was the one who first conceptualized space travel as consisting of connecting two continents by a tunnel, which they take the air out of, and then, of course, someone falls in their craft through the tunnel through the earth. And this is like Alice in Wonderland falling
So
down below.
I told my son, I said, maybe the people that we call aliens, instead of them coming out of space, they're really just from like another layer of the cave, and they're just digging down, and they drop through to our realm or our layer of the cake. I don't know. And then I started thinking about, like, instead of like we've been lied to about volcanoes our whole lives. Volcanoes are not exploding mountains. They're people digging cities, whatever, underneath in other realms, and they got to pump that shit out somewhere, and it shows up in our world as lava.
Well, look, I got something here.
Lava's not a naturally occurring substance. It means somebody's building something somewhere else, and they're pumping that shit out to us.
Okay, I came across something here. That TV show, The 100, was interesting because it's like post-nuclear apocalyptic future. Main character falls through a hole in the forest and lands in a 20th century ballroom, which is like, okay, 20th century is beneath the ground 500 years into the future. So this idea of layers is kind of fascinating. The idea of consecutive.
What? That's in the 100?
It's in the 100 in one of the first
I
seasons.
mean, I only made it like 3 or 4 episodes in, and then I got bored. I guess I got to jump back on into
Oh
that
yeah,
show.
look. This is interesting. Look at season 1, episode 13. At 113, the space station.
113.
The space station, comprised of 13 segments, falls, and in that episode, there's this underground military base where this guy stores all kinds of art from the 20th century, and it focuses on this painting from the Renaissance. I think it was the painting though of the Tower of Babel. So you see the Tower of Babel in episode 13 of season 1 when the space station falls. These are all things and that episode, in my own life, I had a coincidence with it. I watched it on 11/30, November the 30th, and on that day, NASA had to cancel a spacewalk because of dangerous space junk.
Crazy, brother. Crazy, man. The show has been getting better and better. We've had a lot of really interesting callers, people I've never heard from before, and I love it. They definitely are bringing new ideas to the table, so everybody keep calling in, bring in your ideas. Well, nobody here really knows anything. I mean, the only thing we can really tell is that we're being lied to. Nobody is spitting some hard facts like we're saying exactly, we think the world is X, Y, Z. There's just not enough evidence until we can get into a rocket ship and go up into the sky 500 miles up and look down and see the whole world in one image. Then I'll say I'm wrong. So none of us can do that, but I mean, I love the show because I think all these people that call in are just so creative, and I don't feel so alone because I'm always questioning what this world is. As far back as I can remember, I've always felt like I was being lied to. Like we were told about the globe and all these things, and I just don't believe any of it. It's just like when you can tell somebody's lying to you. You don't know why or how. It's almost supernatural, but you can sense it. And that's how I felt my whole life.
That's a good point.
This show reminds me that there's other people out there just like you. Maybe their own people, but they have that same skill. We can smell the BS, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, we have functioning BS filters here. And the thing is, if you don't listen to your BS filter and it keeps talking to you and you stop listening, what happens is you gradually replace the TV or the authority source, whoever's telling you what to believe, you replace your own intuition with that. And that's the definition of being gaslit, where now you're an apathetic puppet. And we're not apathetic puppets here. That's why we keep asking these questions, and that's why the government's trying to ban question
Tim,
marks.
I'm gonna get off here.
Okay,
I don't
cool.
want to take over your show. I love whenever you come on a Saturday afternoon. I love your daytime shows.
Cool, I'll keep doing them.
Usually I'm sleeping early at night, so I almost never call in the night. I usually call in the daytime. But when I get home, I will update my membership. And so does Ko-Fi have an app in the Android marketplace?
I don't know if it does, but if you do on the Patreon, you'll see I added a new tier, and the more people who sign up
Okay.
at that level, the more podcasts I'll do. But I'm doing hour-long breakdowns on very specific topics, and I'll take suggestions like going deep into Marjorie Cameron, Jack Parsons, into the OTO, into the Masonic rituals. But each of these will be a subject of one podcast, and those will be available to people who are paying 10 a month at Patreon. So, yeah, again, hey, thanks for the call and the support as always, John the Plumber. Call anytime.
You take care, brother. Peace out.
Okay, on the screen here, I found a very, very this tweet here is very damning. This is June 26th, 2019. Elon Musk said in an answer to somebody's question, will people be allowed to move around during the flights, referring to these flights to Mars? And Musk said that would be unwise. Probably needs a restraint mechanism, like Disney's Space Mountain roller coaster. It would feel similar to Space Mountain in a lot of ways, but you would exit on another continent. So I was just talking about Lewis Carroll's concept of drilling a tunnel connecting the Antipodes and then sending a craft through one continent, or rather, yeah, well, through the continents, through the Earth to another continent, that this would constitute space travel. And someone calculated that it would take about 42 minutes to go through the Earth in this manner, accelerating and then decelerating through the Earth. Anyway, Space Mountain. Here you have Elon Musk comparing space travel to Space Mountain. Consider this in the context of Wernher von Braun, who wrote about the Elon who's going to colonize Mars, and Wernher von Braun's friendship with Walt Disney. Disneyland, I think, look, all the resources, the energy, the technology, and the propaganda, and all the media that went into creating Disneyland, all the characters, the mythos, the Disney universe, that's all it would take to create the Mars base. Our space universe is the Disney universe. We live in the Disney universe. Now, if you need any evidence for that, you just have to look at the tie-ins. Not a coincidence that we're going to have a rocket called the Starship going to Mars. So the Star Trek tie-in. We have all these media tie-ins, but let me show you this one. You got Mickey on Mercury. Yep, you got the face of Mickey Mouse on Mercury. You have Pluto, the dog on Pluto. You have the House of Stark on Mars. This is the House of Stark from Game of Thrones, which, again, Mars has symbolism attached to it, the metal iron, the color red, and you'll find some Game of Thrones Iron Throne tie-ins here with the Age of Mars, which is what we're entering into, the Aeon of Horus. House of Stark also has an interesting tie-in, considering that Tony Stark is Iron Man, and Elon Musk has been compared to Tony Stark, Iron Man, and he's taking us to Mars, the planet associated with iron. Then, of course, you have the Star Trek logo on Mars in the form of a big plateau. Then you got the Death Star. One of the moons of Mimas looks just like one of the moons of Saturn called Mimas is the Death Star looking moon here. Significant here because Darth Vader is Saturn personified. And then we had Olaf the snowman as Ultima Thule, the most distant object ever spotted in the far, 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 far north. Not a coincidence that Olaf is the name of a northern chieftain or king. Again, these are all tie-ins. This is what I call fake fake. So fake fake means that, well, space hasn't been established as real, so anything they show us is fake fake. And if you're debating, well, does Pluto have the face of the dog on it? Is there a Star Trek logo on Mars? If you debate that, you're debating the realm of fake fake, assuming the existence of the fake. It's part of how they get you into their magic show. And that's what we're in. There is a world stage, and it is a magic show. We'll be back later to take calls. Thanks, Thirst for Truth. Thanks, John the Plumber and others for the support. Definitely appreciate it. If you want to join the Patreon, there's a link there. Real Keck, if you want to call in and talk about your philosophies and stuff, I'm cool with it. But we all know that the government hires agents to get channels like mine banned. So if I let you on and you're going to read us recycled, boring claptrap like, oh, the Clintons eat babies, or the Democrats are all part of a satanic cabal, like we've heard this stuff, you're just going to tell us another version of it. So you're welcome to call in 833-311-1984. Again, phones are open. If you don't want to call now, we can call later, or you can also hit me up on Skype, and we can even take it offline. I'm by no means restricting anybody's freedom of speech here. Anybody who claims so is crisis acting, and I'm tired of crisis acting truthers acting like they're being censored. I have had to sue YouTube twice, just to keep the flow here. We're not being censored. Sometimes you just have to push back. So maybe you're not pushing back hard enough. If I'm censoring you, whatever your name is, hit me up on Skype. Jay Digg says, Starlink is what originally brought me to IPS. I had friends see the train in 2019, and I was trying to find information on how big they were. And the only thing I could find is that they were roughly the size of a table. It didn't make sense that you could see them in the sky that high, if airliners at 7 miles high are so tiny. One of Tim's podcasts popped up in my Googling. I didn't become a regular listener until COVID started, or a commenter until 2020. Elon Musk and Starlink was my beacon here. So shout out to Elon Musk. Thank you for bringing some more people over here with your poorly planned and poorly thought out productions. Starlink is so obviously debunkable. We're like, you cannot see anything in low Earth orbit when it passes the Terminator line. If it's that low, if it's like after midnight, maybe you could see it for a brief window, you could make the argument possibly, but it's in the Earth's shadow. The Earth has a shadow that extends 870,000 miles out into space, according to their math. So according to their science, according to their model. So if you're going to say that the shadow of the Earth extends out almost 1 million miles, and some object passes around the corner, passes the Terminator line, it's like a washing machine sized object, 150 miles above your head, at midnight, it's not going to glow in the dark. It doesn't have any light on board. It's sure as hell not going to reflect the sun. So what are people seeing? And they always say that. Well, then what are we seeing? We must be seeing something. Yeah, that's the non sequitur fallacy if you throw in the supernatural or the unproven. So you're most likely seeing lights. And most people, again, assume that they've seen satellites because they look up and they see lights, but it's because they haven't been informed about the Earth's shadow. I used to have people say, I saw the space station last night, and then 90 minutes later I saw it again, and then 90 minutes later I saw it again. And I'm like, when and where? And they're vague. No, it's a precise thing. If you're going to see it, you need to know where you are. Latitude, longitude, and what time of night. But the idea that you would see it multiple times in a night was debunked by the shadow. And as soon as I started talking about the shadow, people stopped calling in with these fabrications. Why do people lie? I don't know. I remember as a kid, kids saying they saw Santa. Why do adults lie about things like this? Okay, let's see. Someone gifted the QAnon Queen a pricey RV so she can convoy the country. So the QAnon Queen is the one in Canada who says that you don't have to pay your bills because of Nasara and Jasara and the Great Awakening. And people believe her enough to have purchased her an RV. She was recently given a new RV, but some of her followers are begging for financial help because, of course, they didn't pay their bills. Okay, we'll be back definitely later on this evening. Open phones. I'll put a link in the chat. Thanks everyone for joining. And if you want to call in or hit me up on Skype, just search Infinite Plane Radio. This is Auto Hoax, Chief Crow and the Flat Earth Worms. We will be back. And again, I put a link in the chat. If you're not getting the text alerts, go to infiniteplane.media. Text alerts are free. And so are the memes. So if you want to pay the $2 cover charge to get in the Discord, memes are free.
into your brain, the infinite plane. The edge is in your mind. 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 Edge is in your mind. The edge is in your mind. The edge is in your mind. The edge is in your
Alright, I'm sorry for the interruption, everyone. It seems like we were hit by a micro EMP burst or an errant mouse click. I canceled everything when I was just trying to turn the phones on. 833-311-1984, they are on. Let me go ahead and see. I think we have some voicemails to respond to. Alright, here we go.
Okay, I guess it's working. The voicemail sounds like crap. Like I'm in a...
Okay, the voicemail sounds like crap. That's actually me. Bit of an auto-criticism there. I'm going to have to respond to that. I'll update the voicemail, and I also have some ads I actually have to update. Alright, so let's see. Anyone here in chat? Alright, let me see. Yes, thanks everyone for showing back up. Joined by Kahuna Bear, Maxwell Cooper, Restless Bear, Thirst for Truth. Again, thanks everyone for your patience. We were on just a few moments ago. On schedule, but we had an unscheduled interruption, but we're back on. Vacuum Cleaner said, I heard Full House is trending in hell. It is quite hellish when you listen to the Bob Saget that they don't really talk about. I mean, you think about him with Full House, but outside of that, you have the comedian who has this notoriously, what do you call that? That sense of humor. But beyond that, he has these routines, these joke routines that really go into excruciating detail about some pretty horrific situations, which it's Pizzagate humor is what I would call it. If you want to call it humor, it's Pizzagate humor. In fact, let me go ahead and bring up this clip here, just so you all know where we're coming from with this Bob Saget predicting his own death. Now, this isn't the Instagram post that we referenced last time. This is actually Bob, in his own words, in a non sequitur, kind of awkward sort of way, just inserts them into the conversation almost subliminally. So this is Bob Saget predicted his...
So I don't have long to live. These are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
You better watch out.
Okay, so they're talking about favorite movies, like Big Lebowski and others. And so he says, these are your favorite movies, but he throws in there, I don't have long to live, I will be found dead in bed. He throws it in there. Doesn't make any sense. We'll play that again.
But
So I don't have long to live. These are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
you better watch out. So
So if you want to call and talk
Bet.
about that, let's talk about Bob Saget predicting his
better
own
watch out.
death. What does that mean?
So
Another thing I wanted to discuss is going to be the date itself. Today is January the 17th, 2022. Happy birthday, Jim Carrey, Major, the White House dog, and Betty White. The significance there, we'll just go through these. Most of you who follow this channel are pretty well appraised of how much significance Jim Carrey seems to place on the dog star, and it fits into all of his movies in some way. Most conspicuously in the movie The Truman Show, where it's the dog star falling from the sky that causes him to wake up to the reality that everything was in fact just a stage set up for his imprisonment. So here you have Jim Carrey's birthday being the 17th. Again, the association with Sirius the dog star in numerous films. It's his 60th birthday. Today, Major, the Biden family dog, turns 4. So happy birthday to that dog. Is it 4 or 5? It's 4. It's born in 2018. And then another thing here, Betty White would have been 100 today. So Betty White would have been 100. Now, the significance there is her death was in the news on New Year's. So it's on the news on New Year's. Well, New Year's happens to be the night that everyone in the world is worshiping the dog star Sirius, the god star for the Masons and the occultists. So whether you know it or not, you're all reveling the same way. You might as well be burning effigies and go into the Bohemian Grove yourself. Just roast your own human effigy. Fashion your own owls out of stone, because you're taking part in the same rituals. Go barbecue at the Georgia Guidestones. Because it says here, the dog star is also known too as the blazing star, also known as the Bethlehem star, and it is also a white star. So Betty White, Betty Bethlehem, white star, she's called a trailblazing star, commemorated on the day that the world venerates the dog star, which reaches its highest point that night at midnight. And the countdown with the falling ball at Times Square represents this thing. So my point here is that today would be her 100th birthday. And again, she was commemorated on that day. It's also Jim Carrey's birthday and the White House dog. Another blatant dog star connection there. Anybody have anything to add to that? That's another one of the topics we'll be discussing. I'm looking forward to the 19th. Look up on the 19th. Just a heads up there. And I have a feeling Space Wars is getting really close. Space is heating up. And I think that was the real subtext, the occult meaning behind the story of the space heaters causing the northwest tower of that 19th-story building on 1-9 to burn. It's all just symbolism. It's all a psyop, bro, as the other Tim Ostman used to say. I mean, I don't mean to be dismissive and say it's all just a psyop, because it's actually leading somewhere. It's not like they're just doing these events in isolation. It's all just walking us towards something bigger. And I think we see where it's going. Garrett7 says, audio, is it my phone? Try refreshing if you're using DLIVE. For some reason, and it's probably because they have some Chinese agent getting in between you and me. That way they can capture every meme and record what I'm disseminating. I mean, really, this is one of those companies that's totally compromised. You realize that DLive demonetized us because of our conversation about 1/6. We didn't believe it was real. And you know who's on the cover of the National Enquirer right now? The QAnon shaman. The QAnon shaman is on the cover of the Enquirer. I was at Walmart. I was like, this guy is there. Nobody knows how fake it is. They see that and they think that's just reality. I'm like, this is so sad. So I posted a picture of it on my Twitter, and someone said that if you take the two bottom rows of letters, the two headlines on the bottom, like you got these, or these two, here we go. These two highlighted areas that describe the QAnon shaman. Apparently he came out and he gave an interview to the Enquirer. It says, QAnon shaman tells all, an explosive Enquirer interview. Who gave the orders and why? America will never believe it. So there you have it. And of course, this is someone who is, in all likelihood, Owen Schroyer. Now, look at the bottom. QAnon shaman tells all, an explosive Enquirer interview. Who gave the orders and the why? America will never believe it. So if you look at the highlighted section for this entire thing, it just, and this is something someone else pointed out to me, you can actually connect it. You can actually take these letters and you can actually spell Owen Schroyer out of the bottom two lines. I have proof here. Probably just a coincidence, but yes, you can spell Owen Schroyer out of those two bottom sentences.
So I don't have long to live. These are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
You better watch out.
Sorry about that. That was, I went the wrong direction. That was Bob Saget. Again, completely normal thing for celebrities to do, mentioning that they're all going to die. Here you can see Owen Schroyer can be clearly derived off of the cover of the Inquirer. How weird is that? Right off the cover. Angst G says InfoWars Shaman. Yep, exactly. The InfoWars Shaman. Not even a good disguise. I tweeted him about it, and you know what he didn't do? He didn't deny it. If someone accused me of being the guy that basically ruined America, I'd be like, no, it's not me. I'd distance myself from whoever that person really is. But no, he just ignores my tweets. So that's a little suspect. If anybody hears from Owen Schroyer, ask him, hey, where were you on 1-6? I mean, we do have an image of him on the stage, but not the whole time. There was a moment there. And if you read or if you listen to Joan Mendez in particular, she was working with the CIA for decades on disguise. She talked about how they would switch from one persona into the other in 30 seconds or less. Cyclops tweeted this. I retweeted his tweet. So the first clue I saw confirming the theory came in a new music video for a new Juice WRLD song, Burn. I have that on my Spotify. I heard that one. And I don't go out looking for music. And so when something's recommended to me, I usually take it as a sign that this is being disseminated into the collective consciousness. They want us all to be aware of it, whatever it happens to be. And the video for Burn, and this is the first I've seen of it, depicts the apocalypse with meteors destroying the Earth. So this is all very consistent with the entire Skyfall narrative we've been presented with. Don't Look Up, Space Force doing drills having to do with satellites, Russia and China teaming up on a moon base, space heaters, indications of another 9/11 coming, given away in the symbolism of that staged fire in the Bronx, suggesting that there's going to be a space 9/11, if you ask me, space heaters, space heating up, probably targeting the Northwest. So I'm not hoping, but I'm expecting, just based on what we've observed here, what they're giving away in all of these movies. I mean, it's so many movies where it's the same exact imagery. I think it's going to hit Seattle, whatever it is. So if you're in Seattle, I don't know what to say at this point. It's not like they didn't tell you. All right, let's go and see who's in the chats here. All right, looks like we have a number of new people. If you want to go ahead and say hi in the chats, I'll go ahead and make sure I pass out wrenches. Now, I'm going to play this clip one more time. I think this is the creepiest thing. Bob Saget almost sounds like he's under duress. And that this person he's talking to, this Kelly or whatever, is somehow trying to control it, saying to him, better watch out. Take a listen. Closer attention this time to this other person and her response.
So I don't have long to live. These are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
You better watch out.
So why did Kelly Rizzo say, you better watch out, in a very menacing tone? Is he under duress? Maybe he's lower on the pyramid of Illuminati baby eaters, and he's perhaps worried about his safety. Listen to this part one more time. I don't mean to get conspiratorial. I don't want to read too much into this, but this is not the only thing pointing at his own death. I mean, he tweeted about it on Instagram saying he's going to keep touring until he gets the special shot. So I'm like, what does that mean? Is he going to die soon? Does he know? Is he under duress?
Live. These are your favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
You better watch out. All
right, so that's the main topic. If you want to call in, 833-311-1984, what is the deal with Bob Saget? Who killed him? Yeah, scratch your left eye if you need help. Or scratch your nose if JFK Jr. is still alive. That's the new one. RFK actually went with that. Okay, let's do that again. I'm going to play it slow just so we can really hear the tone and see if we're missing anything here. But
favorites. I'm going to be found dead in bed.
You better watch out.
Bizarre. I mean, what else can you say? Very bizarre. So if you want to call on that, please do. Also, the other topic is the sky falling being presaged in all of the movies, commercials, music videos. Here is Juice World with a 666 vortex on his back, lost in the abyss, watching stuff fall from the sky. He's also in a Foot Locker commercial. We're talking about Juice World. Death Faker, by the way. It shows a meteor shower, an alien invasion, and a zombie attack. It's an end of the world sign that he focuses on here. So again, this is all stuff that is very consistent with what we've seen in the movies. I just watched The 100. I just watched... I think I heard something outside. Sorry about that. Making sure it wasn't another one of these attempted Vax dronies, these Vax drones bumping against the window. That's what they're doing now. No, actually, that was one of the scenarios we came up with. At some point, they're going to send out the Vax drones. But what they would actually what I would imagine the way it would actually work out is it wouldn't be like Black Mirror, where you're running from the thing. No, they're just going to get people so conditioned to their weekly booster that Amazon is just going to Vax drone them to everybody who's quarantined. So every day you hear a little buzzing and it's your daily Vax. Yeah, does anybody have anything to say about Bob Saget? Does it make any sense about the special shot context? Doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, anyway, if you're looking at the screen, you see a big kraken swallowing up a building. We're talking about Juice World in this video. A lot of post-apocalypse stuff. I can see that. That's a reoccurring theme. And zombies. Like, if you think about it, out of all of the things that we have been conditioned to expect for the future, more than almost anything besides aliens, perhaps zombies. Zombies is one of the things we've been conditioned to expect. So it's kind of odd that they haven't shown up yet. Another thing, and I brought this up earlier, global warming, the scenario, the doomsday prophecy, actually started in 88, June of 88. So global warming's 33. So I would expect that this is the year that it comes into fruition. There's a lot to analyze in this video. I've seen this one. It's a commercial about the end of the world by Foot Locker. Juice WRLD's in it. And at the end, they actually kick a corpse on the ground, which I thought was very interesting. Just, there's some kind of a subtext here. Now look at this here. This is also another image from Juice WRLD, Into the Abyss, HBO Max. So this is very reminiscent, if you ask me, of Astro World. And I don't know if there's any relationship between the two, but Astro World, Juice WRLD, the word world, meaning the entire world that we're in, but also spinning. Both of these things have the vortex, the portal to hell, the world. So when I think of the world stage, I think of people who are being discombobulated. They're disconnected from reality. They're whirling. They're being spun. And so what I'm looking at here is Juice WRLD, Astro World, a lot of common themes. And speaking of which, the Astro World concert had 50,000 people. 9 were crushed to death. 20 years prior, at the Rock Slide Festival, headlined by Pearl Jam, there were exactly 50,000 people with 9 getting crushed. Same numbers. But what's more, Travis Scott from Astro World, the headliner, Travis Scott actually had the Pearl Jam concert shirt on that has this vortex thing on. And it was the shirt from that particular concert. He had it on in a music video called Escape Plan that debuted 2 days before the concert. I mean, that is so far beyond coincidence. And they're very subtle. They're very subtle about it. I mean, it only shows up in the music video for about 5 or 6 frames. Like barely, you can't even see it unless you pause. So it's very subtle, but it's there. Okay, Salty says, zombies are the NPCs, are the grays. They're the ones with, okay. Right. Vacuum Cleaner says, the video of Tupac asking someone for help with the MGM Grand has disappeared from the internet. I remember it looked like he was saying, they're going to kill me, I can't find it now. Maybe you've been Mandela affected. Does that video even exist, or is it a memory of something that should exist? But I remember a story about him crawling through the sewers like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, being shot through the hand. I don't think there's any evidence the guy was ever shot. I really don't. I don't think he's dead, and I don't think he fled to Cuba, and I don't think he's that guy that showed up at the Trump rally. All right, let's see. Going through comments. Lean Dion says, the bus driver frantically demanded I put a mask on. I covered my whole face with it, and that satisfied her, she's shrieking. Yeah, the mask Karens. They hate faces. Your face is an obscenity to them. You're a breather. It makes you an individual, and they're trying to de-individualize us. So we're trying to become hive-minded creatures. I've been talking about how we're being coerced into space suits, and I've been getting more and more of those sent to me every single day of people putting themselves in fishbowls. Like basically a space helmet, like something out of a B movie. Not even like new. Sometimes it looks like they're just literally putting plastic bags over their head. It's insane. It's quite literally insane, but the fact is our society is insane right now. And those of us who are sane, who are here we go. God, this is insane. I'm sorry, what do you call this? This person is here's why it's problematic to me. So this person is at a train station with the fishbowl on the head, the ventilator, the mask, but they're sitting in a public place. They don't have full body protective posture. So the instant they take that helmet off, they're going to be exposed. I just think it's such a farce. Unless you're going through a decon zone, unless you're changing clothes. And I have another prediction. In fact, if you want to invest in it, I'd be willing to go into the business. I have a prediction that there's going to be some very fashionable Tyvek style PPE. Different colors, but different styles, but fully functional on the market very soon. So people travel and they'll probably dispose of their pants afterward. I think that's where we're headed. And that's a spacesuit. And we have been walked from safe spaces to social distancing. And the social distancing is now accompanied by creating social distance from the ideas and the quote hate that safe spaces were created to protect us from. Now, what might be another thing that could come along is if you're in one of these suits, they might make it possible to not receive communications from people who aren't high enough on the social credit score system, or like me. So it's like, oh, this person tweets about conspiracies. If they speak to me, I'm not going to hear it. This is just like Black Mirror. I think they're getting people into their own little safe spaces, like your mobile quarantine unit. It's amazing what they've done here. In many ways, this is a religious garment. What I see here is someone in a nun's habit. Nothing against nuns, but the idea is this is a new concept of sin. The whole virus, the pandemic, this virus, this is how they brought the atheists down to their knees, because they didn't believe in God, but they believe in science. And they don't believe in a devil, but they sure love having COVID-19 because it's basically, for them, it substitutes as the devil. And they love to watch it punish the non-believers. They celebrate it. They love their sorry anti-vaxxer websites. They love it when the science deniers die. It's like, just let the flat earthers go. Let them go die in Antarctica. That's one area where they're uber sensitive. All right, going through some comments. Salty Siren says, greedy breather. Bot2022 says, Bob Saget knows the script is probably just another death faker. She was more likely warning him not to preempt the script. Yeah, I got the idea she was higher ranking. Vacuum Cleaner says, I was probably just mandingoed. Yeah, I think you were mandingoed because it's pretty obvious to those of you who've looked, Akil the MC is obviously Tupac. But for some reason in 2022, that's not big news. Like, imagine that. We know the truth about so many of these death fakers. And nobody cares anymore. Thirst for Truth says, study finds masks make you more attractive. I've seen that. Again, this is a war on humanity, on individualism, on your face. Facial expressions are being replaced by emojis. The only facial expressions that you're going to see anymore are the ones on TV. And those ones have all been filtered. All right, let me go ahead and go through a few other headlines and we'll continue. Quite a lot of symbolism, though, with this Juice World character. All the popular musicians have been co-opted to serve as propaganda promulgators for the most part. They all reinforce the dominant thing. I mean, I do think there might be some loose cannons out there. Like, do you remember when the COVID thing started? You had Cardi B was saying people are faking it. Cardi B. She said these guys are faking it for money. She thought it was some kind of a hustle, and she was right. I think she said, I gotta find the exact quote, because right after, though, she started getting into it. Here we go. Something else she had said. She said she wanted in on it, was what she said. Here we go. Wrap up. Cardi B thinks celebrities are being paid to say they have coronavirus. So you can't tell me that she's under the thumb of some CIA agent or some operation that monitors everything she says, because this was way off script. But then she did an about face, and I think she's even invested heavily in PCR tests and masks and everything else. Cardi B thinks celebrities are being paid to say they have coronavirus. She says she's puzzled by the fact that nobody has any symptoms. But I want to find the part where she said, here it is. She questions whether they're being paid to say they have it. She says, quote, I'm starting to feel like you're all being paid to say they got it. And if you're paying them to say they got it, pay me too. She said she's trying to get paid. And then she also said, a bitch trying to get lipo. So, I mean, again, I think they let her in on it. I'm pretty sure that they paid her to catch it. So there you have it, Cardi B, auto hoaxer. Inadvertent auto hoaxer. They can't have celebrities doing that. And that's the problem, that it's common sense, it's obvious. But no, if you defer to your common sense, you will be corrected. All right, let's move on. A few more headlines I wanted to go through. The main one, though, was the Bob Saget bombshell that he somehow knew he was going to die. Not only that, somehow he suggested it would be the result of a shot, a very mysterious thing to say. And then finally, his co-host on the show seemed to try to goad him, or guide him rather, away from talking about that saying. Something about, I don't know, maybe he was treading in hot water. But anyway, he said, quote, I don't have long to live. I'm going to be found dead in bed. Okay, we talked about the birthdays of Jim Carrey, Major the White House Dog, and Betty White. Okay, a few other things. A sixth mass extinction event is in progress. I think Elon Musk is doomsaying again. He's in some kind of mood. Apparently everything's going to die. They're too extreme for QAnon, but right at home with a Trump rally. So it's really getting into the news that JFK Jr. is believed to have returned. Not only that, but that he was actually the guy wearing a Trump costume the other night. So in case you missed it. YouTube removes QAnon videos claiming Donald Trump is Mussolini's nephew. So I've heard a few things. I heard that General Flynn was related to Patton, and there's even someone they're touting as being Marilyn Monroe. So yeah, they have this entire cast of dead celebrities coming back to save us all. Another topic, Flat Earth is going to be brought back to the BBC for some reason, and there's a lot of opposition to it. We'll cover that as it happens. Yeah, this Dallas QAnon cult believes that JFK was disguised as Trump. Yeah, I feel almost embarrassed saying it. They're saying it's actually JFK. Here's something from The Sun. House of Pain. Inside the curse of Full House. So apparently there's a Full House curse. All these celebrity and media curses are always fascinating to me. Like the 27 Club, the Die Young curse. So this is another curse. I have not heard about this one. Matt King says, didn't Juice World die? Yeah, he fake died, and you know, that's the thing. They die and they continue to have these posthumous releases. Joined by 5 Minutes of Fame, Clockwork 113, and a literalist, Mary Smith. Thank you, everyone. So listen to these curses. These are horrific, and I'll save the worst for last. So, House of Pain, Inside Curse of the Full House Stars. One, and forgive me for not knowing their names. Uncle Jesse's girlfriend, mail fraud. Kimmy from next door, troubled relationships. The Elvis impersonator guy, DUI. Bob Saget, Pizzagate or whatever. And then the other one, the older sister, conservative views. So according to the Sun, conservative views counts as the House of Pain curse. Like, that's bizarre. A DUI, I get it, but still, there are worse things than conservative views. She's like a QAnoner or something. They have a picture of her. Like, how did it happen? In retrospect, all the early warning signs were there. All right. Let me go ahead and open phones. Someone said they try to call 833-311-1984. Okay, got a voicemail from John the plumber.
Hey Tim, it's John the plumber in Florida. I was just calling to let you know I was listening to maybe the replay or whatever you had going on this morning. Maybe it was from yesterday, but we were talking about the Epstein-Barr syndrome, and it just freaked me out, man. I mean, I almost got into a car accident just listening to it. Just thinking about it, I was like,
Okay, let me bring this up. The Epstein-Barr thing is kind of a big deal. It really is. What we're talking about is how do you explain this? I mean, here's my article on it. Alice in Wonderland, space relations, and the Epstein-Barr virus. These are some interesting connections is all. So I was reading about the Moderna human trials for a shot, quote, built using the same mRNA tech as the company's COVID vax that could be called the first Epstein-Barr virus vaccine. So just for some perspective here, the Epstein-Barr virus, and here's how it connects. So Jeffrey Epstein worked for Donald Barr, the father of A.G. Barr. They worked around teenagers because they worked at a school. So you got Epstein and Barr hanging out. Now, Donald Barr wrote really bad fiction, specifically Space Relations, a Gothic tale about enslaving teenagers on islands. So here you have Jeffrey Epstein in a school with teenagers, employed by a guy named Barr, who writes books about enslaving teenagers out in space relations. Now here's where it gets weird. There's a sexually transmitted disease called the Epstein-Barr virus. That's the nature of this disease. It's what they just got a vax for. And the vax, there you tie in your Bill Gates, another Epstein buddy. One of the symptoms of this particular STD, the Epstein-Barr, the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, where they suffer size and, quote, space relation distortions. Like, everything about size and space relations gets distorted, and time as well. So again, this Alice in Wonderland STD, Alice in Wonderland syndrome, it says it's a rare neurological disorder, distortions of visual perception, body image, experience of time, and people also feel like things are smaller than they are. So the connection here, well, anyone who studies or researches conspiracy theories knows that there's quite a lot of symbolism correlating MK Ultra, mind control, human trafficking, and everything else to Alice in Wonderland. And the entire Epstein, QAnon, human trafficking narrative has a lot of follow the white rabbit type of symbolism as well. But again, this is space relations, Donald Barr. And then another aspect to it may have to do, I think, with, well, I have some other ideas about where this might connect, but again, just a side note. So let's go back to the voicemail and hear why this caused him to swerve, why it distorted his sense of time and space.
it just freaked me out, man. I mean, I almost got into a car accident just listening to it. Just thinking about it, I was like, world, or even if we're in an actual physical world, there's definitely a meta script. I mean, if you point that out to anybody, I don't know how you could look at this world the same. It almost makes it to where, like, I'm not even afraid anymore. I'm not afraid of anything. I know, like, none of this is real, so there's no point even getting worried about anything. There is no Epstein. There is no Maxwell. All this shit is make-believe. It's like, It's like fucking Hollywood is running the world.
Which would actually be good news. It'd be good news. So it's kind of strange. People are hoping for, trust the plan. They hope it's true. They hope JFK is coming back. Well, if JFK comes back, it means all this insane stuff is 100% true. So it's kind of good bad news, and maybe it's also bad news if you look at it in the context of their belief that JFK is Christ returned, and Christ returning after succumbing to a head wound, a significant head wound. So that alone is a miracle, which fits nicely with Revelations and the Antichrist with the head wound deceiving the world with the beast by his side, which might be Trump. I don't know. But the whole scenario here is the QAnoners are actually poised to worship the Antichrist. So anyway, let's continue with this voicemail.
No. But long time listener. I mean, me and you, we go back to like 2017. I thought it was even before. I thought I was listening to the show since 2016, but maybe it's 2017. But long time listener, I think this is the best show on the internet. Keep up the good work, and you take care, brother.
All right, thank you, John the Plumber. And it might have been the tail end of 2016, maybe. But 2017 is when we really started working towards this idea of testing, or rather breaking the boundaries established for all of these different ideas and creating a lot of this cross-pollination of ideas, which is, of course, forbidden. Everyone's supposed to stay in their own little box. Infinite Muse says, Alice is the name of the girl in Utopia. Oh, that's right. That's right. And Mr. Rabbit, and that's Alice in Wonderland stuff. Then you got Resident Evil Alice, and then even Alice is the name of the wife in Eyes Wide Shut. The movie has Wizard of Oz references under the rainbow with very direct and obvious and explicit connections to child trafficking in weird elite parties. Lickety Splits joined us, says Auto Hoax or GTFO. Yes, exactly. Now, NA Literalist said Epstein wanted to spread his virus far and wide. Well, let's get a little further here. Okay, so Epstein was also into some kind of eugenics scheme, assuming he's real. Wasn't he trying to sire hundreds of children and have his own little commune? Jeffrey Epstein hoped to seed the human race with his DNA. So if you get into this, it gets a little stranger. Because what I think we're looking at is this idea, because this is his version of transhumanism. Here's something from The Guardian. Now, this could all be theater, but this does connect. This does connect with this whole idea of space relations. In this bizarre world of scientists, private jets, parties, and eugenics. But anyway, my point being is this. This whole space relations connection to Epstein and the Epstein-Barr virus, the distortions of time and space, this may all involve, I think, fake space travel. What greater example could there be of a distortion of time and space than living in a deep underground Mars base beneath Arizona, thinking that you're millions of miles away? But I suspect there might be something to the idea of the rich with their own little arcs populating their deep underground bases with their children, their progeny, because they can create the next generations while the rest of us get wiped off the surface. Like perhaps that's the case. There's a lot of arc symbolism in all these movies. 100 in particular, it's very strong with that one, where the space arc is used to preserve humanity because we've nuked everything after we gave control to an AI. And they send 100 of the youth down. Reminds me of the mud flood conspiracy theory with the orphan trains. Like orphan trains from space. And everything's based on a reset. Everything's under mud. The Statue of Liberty is up to his neck. Which is common, the Statue of Liberty being mostly buried. Which is just, to me, not necessarily mud flood in the sense of like a tidal wave. It just means sediment deposited after a flood, I suppose. Alright, I am going through some comments. Lane Dion says Raccoon City and Resident Evil anagram for Corona. Yeah, I recall there was also some connection between the logo from Resident Evil and some place out there in Bat Stew Central. All right, more headlines. I talked about Russia and China teaming up against NASA as we predicted. They're building a moon base together. So that's what comes next, if you ask me. They will occupy the moon once they're no longer competing with the space cowboys. My Pillow's Mike Lindell hires Newsmax host Emerald Robinson, who claimed COVID vax has satanic trackers. Now, I watched Trump's speech, or most of it, the other night, and I've watched more closely the reactions of others, especially the QAnoners, to this thing. And again, they don't believe that that was actually Trump. They do think that that was some kind of a disguise, and they have a lot of, I guess you call this evidence. But this is what I want to share with you. This image here is, they believe, JFK. So it's kind of conflicting. Was JFK wearing the Trump disguise, or was that Junior tonight? And this is JFK in the audience. I find it more plausible that Junior could be wearing that massive rubber suit than somebody who's over a century old. So here you have it, JFK spotted alive at the Trump rally. And there's nobody that can put a stop to this. Lickety Split says Lewis Carroll's best friend was a child, allegedly. Well, there are certain allegations, but the story of Ellis is the story of, it's even in The Matrix. The basic premise is, one, distortion of, as we said, the Alice in Wonderland syndrome, distortion of time and space, but the idea too is that she's in a dream world. The rules are different. Everything's topsy-turvy. In fact, she falls down the tunnel. When she falls down the tunnel, like it's zero G, that's because Lewis Carroll came up with the idea of digging tunneling through the world, connecting the antipodes, taking the air out, and then having this vacuum through which you launch your craft. And he postulated you could send something through the earth much faster than going above ground, which is what they're now doing with Hyperloop, by the way. Electromagnetics and vacuum tunnels. I mean, it's all very interesting how these things connect. So Alice in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass. I think Through the Looking Glass, in terms of mind control and how it's used, I think that the meaning of it is the more indoctrinated you are, the more you're seeing the world through their lens, the looking glass. Infinite Plane Radio. What do you think about Bob Saget's death prediction or the emergence of JFK Sr. at the Trump rally?
What would that be? Like JFK Sr. emerged at the Trump rally? When?
On Saturday night. I have a picture of him on the screen. I mean, first impression, does that even look like him?
Okay. JFK Sr., would that be, wait, John F. Kennedy?
Yeah, according to QAnoners, they believe that John F. Kennedy.
No.
That's what they believe. I'm not standing by that one. And then my other thing was,
No.
did you hear Bob Saget predicting from his own mouth, predicting his own death?
No. I mean,
Yep.
I actually think they have stage names, you know what I mean? So, I mean, if they kill off their stage name, it's not really a felony, so, like, they can actually, you know what I mean? You know.
Right, yeah,
It's like
exactly.
Prince, you know?
So with Bob
It's
Saget,
like Prince.
okay, Prince.
Okay.
Prince died in what, 2019 or whatever, in his elevator, and that was not his real name. But so you're thinking that the character died, but he continues to live and collect the royalties or something?
Yeah, I mean, like, he's, you know, he won't, I mean, like, the stage name is like their, you know, fake created life. So when they kill off their fake created life, well, then they can still live as their real name, their corporate name. I mean, that's what I think these guys do, but I don't know about JFK. I mean, he'd be pretty old. Probably dead, you know, by now. I mean,
Good point on the name thing. And for people who might find that tough to rectify, consider this: crisis actors. You take on a fake name, you perform on TV, and that person dies. It's not you. And I think with some of these celebrities, we might be, and some of these more prominent propaganda outlets, yeah, death fakers, they just move on. And that would explain how they're all able to eerily predict their own deaths. This is like all of them.
Right, and usually get away with it. Like, if somebody finds out about it, it's just like, oh, I'm a stage name. You know, it's just like another act, you know. But yeah, I
Right.
think like the Prince thing, you know, what was her name? What was his sister was Tyga Rogers Nelson. Like, she didn't even know Prince was like a celebrity or whatever.
Oh yeah,
But like,
Prince's
how
sister,
did she not?
Prince's sister,
Yeah,
Tika or whatever. Yeah,
Tiga. Yeah,
Taika or Tika. She was also a singer, but yeah, a few people suggested that she was in fact Prince in a costume.
yeah, yeah, like take all he has to do is like dress up as some fat old lady. I mean, same size. It looks just like him. If you look it up on Google, I mean, you can kind of see it. But I mean, that's what they do though. That's why he took the name, the symbol. You know, he named himself a symbol. He wanted to get away from that. You know, his name being, you know, a debt collector. You know, or being, you know what I mean? I don't know. I
Well,
don't know.
look,
That's
I,
what
I
fell
think
in,
so.
but I
I
don't
think
know about
so.
the JFK thing.
No, no, okay. I'm not on board with the JFK thing whatsoever. I think it's a crazy psyop, but I'm just surprised that it's not going away, and that it's been encouraged by the Kennedys. Robert F. Kennedy has encouraged the QAnoners to think that John F. Kennedy Jr. is coming back to save them, and then somehow in the last year they added on the JFK thing, so it just went deeper into this
No
other
way. Yeah,
reality.
you're right. No. Yeah, no, I think you're right. That JFK. I don't know. You know, there was a theory that went around though that I actually kind of caught on that he was what was his name? Jimmy Carter. Like
Yeah,
10 years
yeah.
later, because they actually look the same. Like that. That was almost viable, but then of course, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I would wonder too. It's like, why would you take a step down looks wise? But I don't know. Maybe, but whatever it is, they have also gone beyond just this idea that they're fighting this coup. They're fighting what they believe was a takeover in the '60s. They're fighting the deep state, but they actually think now that the Kennedys are literally the blood of Jesus. They call it the Jesus strain, and that
No
Trump.
way.
They call